The idea that the solution to apartheid is to let the colonial state recover and get a partition of land, that's a failed solution. The only solution is a one-state solution. The only solution is to get rid of the Israeli government. And I will prove it, because that was our only solution in South African apartheid. Imagine in South African apartheid, if we allowed the colonial state, a part of governance, you would call us insane. But our brother here, Mr. Warrior, wants us to give a state to the colonial occupying force. Why? Because we're nice people? I don't know. He thinks, I don't know, because he's too nice? I don't know. Can somebody explain this to me? Yep. Talk about a debate. There's no debate. This is going to be a stomping. I'm going to stomp on heads today. It's going to be a stomping. I feel sorry for Warrior. I feel sorry for Warrior. He has to come against me. I feel bad for him. I feel bad for Warrior. Today he's going to be exposed. I feel bad for him. I feel bad for him. Today I will be put on the map, and today he will be fallen down. He will fall. I feel bad for him. Today is the day. Today is the day that will put me on the map, and today is the day he will fall. All right. Hello?
Loud and clear. Yep, we hear you. All right, let me.
Yo, give me a minute. Let me turn on camera. All right, there we are.
Got the note. God, you got a lot of notes down there. I see.
Bro, I didn't realize how much shit this is.
I was talking to him the same thing. Like, there's just so like, I googled this. I'm like, I'm gonna go crazy.
Oh yeah. You're talking about the research? Oh yeah, man. That was well.
It's
Man,
so
I
like
learned a lot. Yeah.
I mean, like the second you type in apartheid, it shows like 500 articles. I'm like, fuck.
Hey, nice to meet you, Warriors. I've seen your TikToks, man.
Nice to meet you.
You talk really fast. It's really nice to see you in real life. On TikTok, you talk a little bit different.
Yeah, here's the thing. TikTok is low tiered argue. It's so like the arguments are so crap. It's like, okay, like, give me someone that can argue. Like I got sick of it.
Bro, I'm not gonna lie. Oh my god, I've seen some arguments. Oh my god, and I'm not trying to be like weird or anything, but some people should just not argue. And I've seen it mostly from girls. Man, they immediately like start telling everybody they're racist. I'm just like, shut up.
I got two examples before we start this. So my best one, I mean, this, well, maybe we'll talk about it. The Aaron Bush. I said Aaron Bush was not a hero, just given the fact that this was all about him. There was one guy that commented. Well, okay, one girl commented, she got upset, whatever. But another guy commented, replying, saying, "Yeah, I agree. It goes against our tenets." And I'm like, "Oh shit, wait, what? It goes against our tenets because he committed suicide. It's against our religion." The girl goes after him, and well, I agree with him. The girl goes after him. I realized, wait a minute. Our tenets. I click on his profile. He's Palestinian. I'm like, you dumb bitch. She says, "Oh, you don't care enough about them."
Be careful, man. A lot of the girls, by the way, they're very corrupted by the Western society. They don't believe in Islam anymore. They act like they do, but they're very corrupted. They're different species. Like they'll tell you they're equal to men, and in Islam they know that men are one level degree, not more. It's just one level above them, and it's because they have you have to have authority over what you're responsible over. And God gives us that responsibility over them. That's the only reason, but not because they're better than them or anything. But these women, they actually argue, no, we're completely equal. They argue that they can walk around with no hijab. It's become very bad. They don't know how to argue anymore.
It's a different It's a different culture, I think, because like in the West you grow up with this, but then if you try to apply it to anywhere else, it doesn't work.
Exactly. What they do is they try to combine these two cultures, and you cannot do that, man. You either stand straight on what you believe in, or you do something else. Like go join their culture, but don't act like this is our culture. Don't put me with you. But yeah. So very interesting. Very nice to meet you. Hey, thank you, Isaac, for this. This is amazing.
Is your mic's a little muffled? Is it connected? Is it going like where? I think the mic might be going to the wrong spot, or maybe it's a little loose. I don't know what it is.
My mic?
Yeah, it's a little. It sounds like a little muffled. But it might just be, I don't know what it is. It might just be like a little loose or something.
Are you guys hearing me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you, but it just sounds...
A little. Yeah.
You know what? Give me a second. Maybe it's this.
It sounds like if you look at my camera, it sounds like you're like this.
What about this? Is it better?
Well, wait, a little bit better.
Yeah, now you're crisp as hell.
All right, all right. I think what happened was it used my camera's microphone,
That's
not
what I-
mine.
yeah,
That's
what I was
why.
wondering.
My bad.
It sounded like you were far away. Now you sound fucking crisp. Okay. All right. Are we all set? Are we all? Is everyone good? Everyone got drinks. Everyone comfortable.
Yes.
Yes, let's do it.
I think we both know. I mean, so everyone knows. It's 10 minutes of opening introductions that we're gonna do, and then we're gonna go into a. I had two options. We could either do where we have one person lead the argument for 10 minutes, and then we switch, and then we go into a Q&A. So it'd be like someone goes down their thought process, and that person has to come with them, and then they switch, where the other person gets to ask the questions and lead them, and then it would go into a general discussion. Or would you rather just go into a general discussion directly after opening statements?
I like general discussion.
Okay, I'm cool with that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright. Recording, yeah. Oh, can you both say something real quick? Just so I can...
Hello, 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 hello.
Okay.
Test.
Thank you. All right. Okay, it should be good.
All right, are we ready?
I think we're ready.
Let's do it.
Today on here, how to change the conversation. We're here with more than one person today. We're here with Warrior Insights and Manor Reports. And today, there's actually a debate about to go down on is Israel apartheid? And we're going to start with, do I have a coin to flip? Let's go with the one directly to the left of me on my screen. Manor, give your opening statements on, do you think Israel is an apartheid?
All right. I'm gonna go ahead and give you my arguments. Give me a second. I wanted to stand up for my opening statement. I think this will give us a little bit more clear, concise picture on what I'm trying to express over here. Okay? Can you guys hear me clearly? Thank you. I want to thank everybody for allowing us to do this. Isaac, thank you so much for inviting me, and Warrior, man, thank you for accepting this debate. I'm very interested in hearing your arguments, my brother. We'll see how they align, but today we are talking about apartheid. So I want to explain a little bit about apartheid. We're going to define it from my perspective, and then I'm going to give you guys my reasoning, clearly, concisely explaining to you why I believe there's a system of apartheid being pushed on the people of the territories now in Israel, because you can't even call them Palestinians anymore. They're not recognized as Palestinian anymore, so they're people of the other territories. And so I'm going to explain to you why that system exists, how it exists, and I'm going to clearly and concisely, using comparative arguments, we're going to compare with another system of oppression, and hopefully this will make a clear picture for you guys. So, without further ado, let's jump right in. We're going to explain apartheid. Then, if Isaac will allow me, I'll also describe why I believe Israel is blockading and is creating a full blockade on Gaza and their territories. And then finally, we'll explain to you, I'll give you my solution for this once and for all. All right. What is apartheid, guys? Apartheid, let's define it clearly, is a system of oppression. It's a system of governance created which creates basically legalized segregation, racial segregation. My best argument for this, or my best example for this, is the National Party's indoctrination in South Africa during 1949. When the National Party in South Africa was indoctrinated, we would all agree, created a system of dual governance where they segregated the people that lived there from the colonialists that wanted to exist there as well. So I thought, why not look at the laws in their books? If we all agree that they're an apartheid state, why don't we go look at the laws in their books and try to compare them with another lovely state that we all appreciate, the state of Israel, and see how they compare. Maybe there's a difference, or maybe they're exactly the same system of governance. And let's start with the history of South African apartheid. South African apartheid starts in 1949. Imagine what year did the UN partition the Palestinian territory? in 1948. Who lived in South Africa at that time? Who colonialized South Africa at that time? Was the Brits. Who colonialized Palestine? Was the Brits. So I have both. Basically, I believe this is a very easy comparative argument because they both existed at the same time. They existed from the same colonial force. And so let's look at the apartheid African laws and what made South Africa apartheid, and maybe we can relate that to Israel. So, as I said, South African is the modern example of apartheid. Why? Because of the laws that they put on the books since 1949. Ever since the National Party existed, they started introducing laws in their books to try to segregate the people. What laws you might ask? Let's start with the Law of Population Registration Act, 1950. This law demanded people register according to their racial group. Okay, this is normal. In America, we register. You get an ID, you get a passport, that's fine. But it's not normal that based on your registration, if you're a part of Israeli citizen, then you get you're allowed every single permit in the books, and you're allowed access to every single territory. You can purchase any piece of land. You're allowed to permit anything and work anywhere you want in the whole Israeli, and if you want in the other territories, you're allowed to settle as an Israeli citizen. But as a citizen of the other territory, or they won't even call you a citizen of the other territory, as a resident of the other territories in Israel, which is Gaza and the West Bank, you're not even allowed to purchase certain permits. You're not allowed to buy certain pieces of land. You're not even allowed a right of return or an ability to sometimes even to live with your family in the same state. So, are these laws clearly, comparatively equal to each other? Seems like it. Seems like the Population Registration Act forced people to register based on their racial group so they can start segregating them. And that's exactly what happens in Israel. In Israel, population registry laws are on the books and are widespread. There are 5 distinct registration for Arabs and Israelis. A Palestinian will never be able to become an Israeli citizen, not after 2003, after the Knesset issued a temporary law and it's still enforced. But any Jew from any country in the universe can become an Israeli citizen today. All they have to say is, I am a Jew, prove that, and they have to be loving to the Jewish community. And that's proven by their Facebook posts. Literally, look it up. So talk about apartheid. But remember, the Palestinians that used to live there will never be allowed even to become Jerusalemites. That means they are they're third-class citizens. They're not even second-class citizens, because it goes like this. Israeli citizen gets all the permits, all the laws, all are applicable to him. Then Jerusalemites. Then the other territories, the residents of the other territories, which is Gaza and West Bank, and those people are basically non-existent. They're not allowed any permits or anything. Talk about apartheid. Next, let's talk about another law in the books of South Africa, and let's try to relate it with apartheid Israel. Let's see if they're the same. It's called the Groups Area Act of 1950, an act that started group segregation based on their racial groups in South Africa. God bless the National Party. Wow, they're so smart. They decided to segregate people based on their looks, based on how they looked. So let's see if Israel does the same thing here. What better example for this than the UN partition of 1949 or 48? What's better than that? When you give literally exactly the same situation in South Africa. South Africa the National Party gives the majority, the minority of the lands, and that's exactly what happened in Israel. The majority got the minority of the land. The Palestinians were only partitioned 45%, and they even lost over time as well. Whereas the minority, which at that time every scholar will tell you it's at least 25% of the population, 1948 was Jewish, they still were allowed the majority of the land. Talk about apartheid. Another law in the books that relates to apartheid Israel that was existing in South Africa as well. Okay, let's move on, guys. Number 3, the promotion of the Bantu self-government from 1959. This law forced different racial groups to live in areas and mainly got rid of black spots. Oh, where can we find this happening in Israel? Let me check. Oh, I found it. Every single day, people lose what happens is in Israel, like I explained, and I wanted to explain that before, the different classifications of people living. And I needed to explain that because that's very important. When you are a Palestinian living, even if you live in Jerusalem, if they declare you, first of all, you will never be able to become Israeli citizen. So there are certain permits that are not allowed to you. Now that the state exists and owns your land and the land that your house is in, you are forced to go and get these permits. But as a second-class citizen or a third-class citizen, sometimes you're not even allowed to purchase these permits because you don't have the rights to. The Ministry of Interior will not allow you to purchase these permits. So what happens is you literally are forced out of your home. You cannot fight back for your home, which is exactly what happened to the Sub-Leban family. Exactly what happened to the Sub-Leban family in 2023. It happens still today. They get kicked out of their home, and what's more of a joke is they can't even fight for it legally. But you know what the biggest joke is? They have to pay the legal fees for their eviction. I digress. Let's move on. Talk about getting rid of brown spots. Anyways, moving on. Prohibition of Mixed Marriage Act. Oh my God, is Israel apartheid? I don't know. Let me think about this one. If South Africa, can you believe that they prohibited marriage or even sexual relations between whites and other races? Wow, whoa, that's kind of extreme. There's no way a liberal democracy in the Middle East would allow something like that. Is that possible? No, it's possible. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. Look it up on Google. Go right. Is it legal for an intermarriage? Is intermarriage in Israel legal? Go look up what you will find. It will say legal between different faiths in Israel is not legally recognized. I digress. Final point. I'm not going to keep going on these laws. Final point here, guys. The Separate Representation of Voters Act of, I forget the year. But this was an attempt to remove the non-whites from their voter rolls. So they don't want non-whites to vote anymore. They don't want them to have the power. Kind of reminiscent of another state I would mention here, and I'm going to give you exactly what happens. So in Palestine, like I said, because these classifications of people are very important because your classification tells you exactly where you're going to live, who you're going to marry, what home you can buy, and not only that, who you could vote for. Can you believe your classification is what's going to tell you who you will vote for? And I'll prove that to you. In Palestine, they cannot vote in Israeli elections. Palestinians are not, if you're a Jerusalemite, you're allowed to vote for local election, but you're not allowed to vote for Israeli elections. So, like I said, that's why they're second-class citizens. But the third-class citizens, which is the residents of the other territories, which is Gaza and West Bank, they have no rights to vote in Israeli election whatsoever, local, municipal, or whatever form it can be. And also, the Palestinians have no elections of their own anymore. Ever since, I forget the year, but I believe it was 2004, the Israeli government declined their election when they elected Hamas, I believe, as their governing force. And they actually declined the election, and they forced them. They told them, you're not allowed to create any more elections. We do not agree with your elections anymore. So those are all my arguments today. And I only say this to you, and I only say these laws to you, just because I want to compare the modern example of apartheid in the modern world, which is South African apartheid, which was created by the same colonial force, the Brits. And I wanted to compare it because I see a lot of similarities in the two nations right now. And if we agree that South African is apartheid, we have to also agree that Israel is an apartheid state. Now, following that, you want to talk a little bit about the blockade. Am I allowed to? Or is that going to be something else?
You're over time. Let's say you're over time.
Oh, okay, no problem.
But you are allowed to bring it up though. There's no like restriction. Once the general conversation starts, you can bring that up if you want to.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
So I will be giving him also 12 minutes, but it's no problem. And then I do want to just say as reference, do remember though that you are not, your opening statement isn't to attack his opening statement, it's to give your own. All right. And then I'll start the timer whenever you guys start.
Okay, yeah. So can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, cool. All right, so just a disclaimer. I always say this every time. Everything I say is my own opinion, my own analysis, not anyone else's. This is just my own views. I do have my own biases. I'm pro-American, pro-Israel, because I live in America, so why not? Limitations. Before the stream started, everyone, we both kind of agreed to it. The second you type these two words up, you are bombarded with hundreds of articles. So there are things that I missed. I am actually taking the negative view that Israel is not an apartheid state because of the fact that it fails to meet the international law requirements. Currently, right now, from the research that I have done, it does not practice apartheid. It can only be practiced on its own population. Israel does not persecute its own citizens. Breaking down the definition. Now, there are some examples. For example, in the democratic system, Israel is a democracy with equal rights and protections, and as it claims under the law of its own citizens. It has a diverse population, including Jews, Arabs, forgive me if I say this wrong, Druze and Bedouins, and other ethnic and religious groups, all of whom have representation and participation within the democratic process. Arab citizens of Israel have the same legal and Jewish rights as citizens, including to right to vote, run for office, and access to public service. Within the Knesset, Arab citizens of Israel are represented and hold positions in government, including cabinet ministers and Supreme Court justices. And sorry, my notes are all over the place. Arab citizens of Israel have access to economic opportunities and participate in the country's economy as entrepreneurs, professionalism, and workers. Arab students have equal access to higher education in Israeli universities and college, where they study alongside their Jewish counterparts. Arab citizens in Israel also have the freedom to express their cultural identity and through language, literature, music, and other forms of artistic expression. While military service is also not compulsory for Arab citizens within Israel, those that choose to serve in the IDF have the opportunity to do so and contribute to the country's defense. The crime of apartheid, defined by the 2002 Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, is described as inhumane acts against characters of similar to other crimes against humanity committed in the context of an institutionalized regime of systematic oppression and domination by one racial group over another racial group or groups, and committed with the intention of maintaining that regime. Systematic is the key in trying to define apartheid. The burden of proof relies on heavily identifying what structures they are and that suppress the Palestinians within Israel. For me, and what I'm still trying to research and figure out is what racial groups or groups are oppressing the Palestinians within Israel. One of the other interesting things that I've also discovered and never really clicked until now is that most arguments are based upon the laws that are being made, but upon further examination of the laws that I've seen, most of them have happened following a conflict. War is not apartheid. Most of the laws were an attempt to deal with the security systems that happened right after. The term apartheid often enters discussion about Israel, but the comparison is often lacking in nuance. South Africa is completely different than Israel. The conflict between blacks and whites in South Africa is not the same as the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians. Even Palestinian scholars from the research that I've done even identify as themselves where they acknowledge that the conflict is completely different, and that in some instances they do argue apartheid, but the apartheid is completely different. Why did my... Okay, here we go. Moving forward. Give me apologies. The issue is complex, and they do deserve thought, nuanced discussion, and we should have the discussion about it, because in order to find more peaceful solutions, and also hopefully find a further end to the solution. Often in closing, I do apologize, my computer is glitchy. This is what happens when you don't write down. Not all unequal treatment of individuals or groups of individuals is unlawful. Notably, a sovereign state has the right to treat its own citizens differently than non-citizens. While a state is required to provide fundamental rights, such as freedom of religion and due process, to its people, under its sovereign control or jurisdiction, it is not obligated to give non-citizens political rights. Discriminating in favor of one's citizens is such a way entirely permissible under an international law. The Apartheid Convention and Rome Statute prohibit a state from discriminating against a group under its sovereign control or jurisdiction on the basis of race. If race is not the reason for these alleged discriminations, even if other forms of discrimination occur, they do not constitute the crime of apartheid. The Israeli treatment of Arab Palestinians is not based on race. It is It is motivated by geopolitical realities and real security imperatives. Arabs
No, it
who
is
are
actually
citizens of
race.
Israel often
It is
enjoy
actually
equality
race.
under international law that are enjoyed by citizens. Since there is no discrimination in the
actually
first
has
place,
to
the
do with
question
race, the
the question of
Arab.
apartheid fails to meet the standard. Arabs in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip are not citizens of Israel and do not have the same rights as Israeli citizens under Israeli
So let's
law.
prove.
The Israeli treatment of the population. Oh, I already said that. Sorry.
Wait,
The Arab
proof
population of the whole West Bank
is his
and
statement.
the whole in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip is, though, the entities that purport to act on its behalf, for example, the PLO and Hamas. And granted, this was from an article from before, from the research I've done, Palestinian Authority. That's what the identification goes as. Denies that Israel's right to exist altogether and actively engage in ongoing hostilities against Israel and Israelites. Israel, as a sovereign nation, has the absolute right to defend itself against such attacks. International law allows Israel to employ a variety of means to this end, including inter alia, attacks on legitimate military targets, arrest, detention, and trial of individuals involved in terrorist acts, enforcing restrictions and monitoring individuals of persons by land, sea, or air, erecting and operating in security infrastructure such as barriers, checkpoints, outpoints, patrols, searches, and surveillance.
A notebook.
The accusation that Israel is labeled an apartheid towards Arabs who fled Israel and the disputed territories as a result of the ongoing conflicts of 1948 and 1967 and by other countries is by definition baseless, since the state of Israel exercises no authorities over these individuals. Within closing, apartheid as a system has a long history. It has its roots in settler colonialism and was conceptualized and formalized by the intellectual and political elites of Afrikaner nationalists who came into power in 1948. As a systematic crime, it was made possible by a vast array of civil servants and members of security forces, including the police. The non-persecution of apartheid criminals, and the reason why I bring this up is that there have been only two cases where there has been two individuals that have been prosecuted under the state of apartheid. And what I'm reading is a closing article which kind of wraps up as to the difficulties of persecuting this crime.
I want him to.
One of the biggest issues is that, in our view, a prima facie case of apartheid as a crime under customary international law is to answer. It is important to let the courts of the Democratic South Africa adjudicate the case as well as possible future cases. If not now, then when? The reason why I choose to close with that article is the fact that in choosing to go after these two individuals, setting the case of jurisprudence moving forward in regards to apartheid, it's very difficult for the state of Israel to be accused of committing apartheid. While there are certain laws that can file as evidence, as mentioned as before, I think further discussion and further evidence, looking into it further, would help with the discussion.
I'm gonna force him to deal with my arguments. I'm gonna force him to deal with
Okay,
my
you got
arguments.
about 4 minutes to spare on that. You got through it pretty quickly. So now we're gonna move to the general talk portions where I'm gonna try to stay the most out of it as I can and just let you two lead. Might have to come in if it gets a little off the rails, or if the scope of what you guys start talking about goes into other areas, I might reel it back in depending on how far out of the scope it is. But a lot is in the scope with Israel and Palestine, as we know, because you go all the way back to like 1919 and all the way up to 1948 to all the way up to 1967. There's so many different points in history you can hit in different times to explain the systematic oppression that has happened, or if there is systematic oppression, you can explain where the idea comes from through time. So I'm gonna try to stay out of this, but you both are free to take the lead.
Okay.
All right, thank you. So from what I understand from your opening statement, so my opening statement was for me to declare exactly, because we described and defined apartheid to be a systemic and institutionalized. So it has to be a system of, and it has to be institutions that force that system, and it has to create basically a dual class of citizenship. So what I did was I went into the South African laws, understood what made them an apartheid state was these specific laws that they had on the books. I get it. You're saying to me that I guess somebody was sued for it, and the intention now is clear because of the prejudice. But can you actually deal with my actual argument? My argument is these laws are in the books. They're very similar to the Israeli laws that exist on their books. These laws are the reason we can recognize South Africa to be an apartheid state from the beginning. So how do you reconcile that? What are these laws doing? Why is intermarriage illegal in Israel? And how is this a demonstration of a liberal democracy? Can you please just dive a little bit on my points a little bit? I want to just hear what you think about my argument.
Right, yeah, for me, it's as of when I was doing the research, I have bumped into some laws, but I have not seen that one in regards to
Just really quickly. Research say is intermarriage legal in Israel? Is intermarriage legal in Israel? It's actually
allowed.
not legally recognized. If two people from different faiths marry each other in Israel, the state will not recognize that marriage. They have to come either from outside, and even if there are two from two different, let's say they did allow them to marry, they still can't live in the same territory. It's a very long process, and they have to get permits. So there's laws in the books to try to segregate these families from one another, these two people from one another.
So I looked it up. So in Israel, marriage can be performed under the auspices of the religious community to which the couples belong, and interfaith marriages performed within the country are not legally recognized. However, marriage performed abroad or remotely from Israel must be registered by the government. Matrimonial laws based on millet or confessional system has been employed since the Ottoman Empire, which including what is now Israel. Israel only recognizes marriage under faiths of Jewish, Muslim, and Druze community and on specifics of denomination of Christianity. For me, I mean, again, like for me, when I was looking this up, I was trying to find more examples of it in regards to like a few of the laws. In regards to this one specifically, I will admit I have not seen this yet, but I am curious as to see where this came from Cambridge University. So I mean, this is why we have debates, trying to figure out.
I know, no problem. Yeah, this is what we need the debates for.
Yeah.
So again, so maybe you're not familiar with these laws. That's fine. So let's try to get it from your angle. Your angle is, you say that. Can you just concise, because you read a lot and it was very quickly. Can you concise your argument very quickly? So
yes,
your argument is that basically Israel is not committing apartheid because of what? Just concisely.
It fails to meet the. So here, give me 1 second. Let me just pull this up. I'm still figuring this out. So, in the debate prep that we had, we agreed on a certain definition that the crime of apartheid was defined by the 2002 Rome Statute and the International Criminal Court as humane acts character and similar to other crimes of humanity committed in the context of institutionalized regimes of systematic oppression and domination by one racial group over another group or groups committed with the intention of maintaining that regime. For me, in shortening it, some of the laws that have been placed within have historical context behind them in regards to not necessarily oppressing, but in regards to looking for after its nature and security. So, for example, give me 1 second. Let me just pull this up. I have a long list of notes. The absentee property law is one of them. You also have another example of the law of return, 1950, and the mandatory evacuation law. All of them were passed in 1950, shortly following after the 1948 Israeli War of Independence. For me, where I'm trying to argue is the fact that some of these laws do have historical context behind them, and the reason why they were passed was not necessarily to oppress anyone, but in regards to as establishing as a new nation state, how do we handle these certain procedures? For me, where
sorry, can I ask you, like, when the Balfour Declaration was declared, do you believe it was declared so it can the word that you just used, what was it? You just used a word to
systematic?
No, to oppress. Sorry, do you believe the Balfour Declaration was used to like when they declared Palestine to be the Jewish state? Do you believe that they were intending to create oppression to the Palestinian people, or can we just because they declared it without without a clear recognition of what to do with the Palestinian people, we can just come up with the argument that they actually did want to create oppression? Like, do they have to say we are here to create oppression and kick out the Palestinian people, or can they just say, hey, we declared these Palestinian people, this Palestinian state to become the Jewish state, and then when within those when they declare that, we can understand there's an annotation behind it that says the others have to go. So do they have to actually say it out loud? Like, for example, does the Balfour Declaration not show for you as an oppressive regime that's trying to kick people out of their homes? To me, that's what that declaration shows.
For me, when doing upon the research in regards to the Arab Revolt, one of the biggest controversies was the fact that the Arab Kingdom was used, that the Arab insurgents were used against the Ottoman Empire. Well, I think it was towards the end. I wish I had the specifics on it. The Arab insurgents faced massive defections given the fact that they discovered this ahead of time, and obviously were upset. Now, come following after the war, the Balfour Declaration, and I'm going to mix this up. Psycho-Pikes, Sikhs, Pico, that agreement, obviously they were extremely upset over it as a result. So began, I think.
No, but you have to understand, it wasn't
Yeah.
only them that were upset over there because when the Israelis got the same treatment, when the Israelis before the partition were told, hey, no, they were literally told no dual state solution. You are only by the Brits. They were told them only one state. The Jews, the Israelis exploded. They started bombing militias. They kicked out the Brits, and that's when the UN partition was created because the Brits got kicked out of their actual location. So if you think that it pissed off the Palestinians, imagine what like. Of course, it's gonna piss off the Palestinians because look how much it pissed off the Jews when they had the same treatment. They revolted so heavily. So of course you can recognize it's gonna piss off the Palestinians.
Right. I mean, I can definitely see that. For me, so looking into the history, the following 1945, following World War II, every single colonial power started to withdraw their forces. As a result, new nation states were building up, which kind of led to this current conflict that we're going in right now. So as a
the
result,
British would have never left. The British would have never left Palestine if they weren't getting bombed out of it by the Jewish militias, which were extremely
yeah, for me,
invested.
For me, I had to look into it more further. From my research and understanding, was that when everyone started to pull out and new nation states were being formed, one of the biggest controversies and difficulties being made is the fact that who gets this land in regards to who established it. And come after 1948, a series of wars. For example, let me go back over here. We also have the 1948. Let me go back over here.
I know all the wars.
The 1948 Israel War of Independence. You also have the Suez Crisis, the Six-Day War, the Yom Kippur War. Following these succession of wars, and the fact that Israel was able to maintain its legitimacy as a nation state that could defend itself, well, then arose, I wouldn't say a problem, but then it kind of established its legitimacy as a state, saying we have the capabilities to defend ourselves and establish ourselves as a strong nation.
Okay, so to me, when the so I'm not sure how I want to respond to you because I still don't understand how can I prove to you Israel is an apartheid because you're not sure about the laws. Okay, so
well, I'm going back to that original definition, and I think this is one of the problems within the international system, international community, is the fact that you do have to meet these certain requirements to become an apartheid. One of the biggest arguments as it's against it is because the current actions that they are undertaking doesn't necessarily constitute apartheid. You can argue other means, but to raise it to the crime of breaking international law of apartheid has a higher legal standard.
No, I'm actually talking about our definition that we use, the systemic, institutionalized differentiation, segregation of two different ethnicities. That's exactly what exists in Israel. We can maybe, I mean, to talk about the October 7 war, that won't get us to the apartheid part. But how we're going to get to the apartheid part, we have to look at the laws on the books in Israel and to see how does it relate with another apartheid state, because how else are we going to try to prove apartheid? Are we going to just look for the statement that Belfort said that we are an apartheid state? Because there is no statement like that. But you still can look at intent. You don't have to find a statement. A lot of legal procedures have concluded that you don't need an actual statement. You can still, with a correspondence of evidence, or whatever it is, the exasperation of evidence, you can show that there's an intent behind something. For me, when I show you the Balfour Declaration did not give a solution to the Palestinian people, when I show you the laws on the book for the Israeli state that completely segregate two classifications of people completely from one another, and I agree with you, like what about the Arabic citizen and the Arabic non-citizen, the resident? But those guys still have a home. Now the Palestinians, they don't have a home. Now the Palestinians don't have a state at all. So those guys literally have no rights anymore for any other state. So at least, you know what I mean? So my argument is there's laws on the books that create the apartheid. The Balfour Declaration to me is a declaration of apartheid. That same colonial force that created apartheid before is the same colonial force that actually existed and controlled Israel. Those are my arguments for apartheid. I don't have to have somebody to tell me, hey, I am committing apartheid. I can just look.
Hello, you okay? Everything all right?
Sorry about that.
Yeah, fine, fine. Yeah, I hear your argument. I mean, I pulled up the Balfour Declaration. I mean, for me, it's not necessarily like, oh, they have to say. I mean, obviously, no, that's not going to work. What I was trying to argue is the fact that the high legal definition of standards set by the international community makes it like you can kind of see the difficulties in trying to establish that it is apartheid. I mean, there's a high level bar in regards to the legalities and to regards to how can you define apartheid. For me, I'm not sure if we're confused on this. For me, I see that Israeli citizens are treated as its own, but in regards to the Palestinians that are under the control of, correct me if I'm wrong, PLO or PA and also within
PLO.
over. PLO, yeah. So the Palestinian Liberty Organization in the West Bank, and you also have the Hamas within the West Bank, Gaza Strip. To my knowledge, those individuals belong to them and not to the state of Israel.
Okay. So do you understand how that happened? Like, for example, so do you understand the different classifications of people in Israel? Do you understand the 5 classifications that exist?
I remember you briefly mentioned in your opening
Let me
statement.
mention them. So,
Yeah, go ahead.
there's 5 classifications. The top one, the top 2 are the best ones. The top 2 give you all basically one is Israeli citizen. You get all your rights. Okay. Then I'm gonna explain to you how to become an Israeli citizen. It's amazing. The second one is Jerusalemite. You had to have been part. You had to have lived in Jerusalem before the occupation, and still living in Jerusalem. Is the resident of the other territories. This is important because these are the people that live in Gaza and the West Bank. Okay, so anybody that lives in the Gaza and the West Bank before the occupation, after the occupation, they are part of that classification. So, but do you know how do you become an Israeli citizen? Do you know how do you get the classification of an Israeli citizen?
No, but in regards
classification on
to
the
in regards to the 5 groups, I'm trying to look this up. Like you said that there are 5 different classes of citizens, but I'm trying to look it up. Do you have any like sources for it? Because I'm being genuine, honestly. Like I can't find it.
So
But-
just look up the different classifications between Israeli citizen and resident of the other territories. Different classifications between Israeli citizens and the residents of the other territory. So what happens is, you know how to become an Israeli citizen? All you have to do, and I read the law, it's on the book, you have to be an Ole. What is an Ole? It's a Jew that explains basically makes a statement that he wants to return to his ancestral homeland. That's it. And then he has to be of liking the Jews. So you're telling me that people that live there are classified as an other territories. The people that live in that piece of land are classified as the other territories, residents of the other territory. But a random American that has Jewish inheritance or Jewish heritage somehow is going to become an Israeli citizen above him in classification, above him in stature, above him in class, and he's lived in that area for all those years.
So I just looked this up in regards to voluntary acquisition. Any Jew who immigrates to Israel, Ole, that's what you refer to, under the law can automatically become an Israeli citizen. For me, and this is where I'm still trying to get confused on, is the fact that Palestinians, are they Israeli citizens or are they citizens of the Palestinian Liberation Organization or the Hamas? That's what I'm getting confused on.
So the Palestinian, there's no Palestinian anymore. That's what I'm telling you. There is no Palestinian. The Israeli government has to authorize that classification for them. There's no Palestinian government that authorizes and gives them the permits for their classifications. Do you understand this? So when I tell you about these different classifications, all of these are submitted and are affirmed by the Israeli government, by the Israeli Ministry of Interior. It's not by the Palestinian organization or government. And even if it is, it has to be accepted by the Israeli government and authorized by the Israeli government afterwards, even if the Palestinian authorities authorize it. So Israel is the one that picks and chooses who's in the other territories. Israel is the one that picks and chooses who's a Jerusalemite, and Israel is the one that picks and chooses who's an Israeli. But my question is, who gave Israel the right to do that? Their conception was and still is recognized as an illegal conception. So my argument is they're scattering. They're scattering because they know they're an illegal occupation, and that's what they started. That's what apartheid is basically when a colonizing force is caught red-handed, or it wants to exasperate and elongate its colonialism, imperialist power state. And so what they do is they start putting these laws on the books. So we have to actually argue the laws. I get it. You're going to argue intent. You're going to argue the guy from the left and the right what he thinks, and Belfort himself, I don't know what his intent was. You know what I mean? He didn't even declare what his intent was. Nobody knows what his intention was of the Palestinian people. I would just assume and speculate that he just wanted to get rid of all of them. Maybe you would assume that there's no way you can prove that. I agree with you. But see, this is where we are never going to get anywhere. That's why we actually, I believe, have to talk about these laws. These laws are all organized and authorized by the Israeli government. The Palestinian authorities have no power over these laws. They have no power of classifying any Palestinian as anything. They have no power of classifying any Israeli as anything. There's no Palestinian government, really. And Israel has full control over the Palestinian, their classifications, and their way of life. So when you're telling me there's a state that has control over people that have no state, that were put on there only 50 years ago, and is clearly a colonialist, imperialist act, from British colonialism. It's clear to me that they're trying to keep this system alive with these laws, and that's exactly what we saw in South Africa. That's why I had to start with South Africa, because that was our modern example of actual apartheid. And if the laws are exactly alike, I mean, what else do you need to see? Like, do you actually need Balfour to come up himself and say, we don't want the Palestinian people to be here anymore?
No. But you see how, like, here's the thing. So when I was doing my research for this, even Palestinian activists who are actually advocating that Israel is an apartheid state, even some by their own admission argue that it's actually completely different. And, granted, why it doesn't go in the national system. But that being said, I mean, for me, I'm just still trying to look this up. No, Balfour himself doesn't have to show over. But the thing is that looking this up, who's in charge of the Gaza Strip in the West Bank, it covers 3 areas. So Area A, which is most of Gaza, 17% in the West Bank, is designed for the Palestinian controlled under Oslo. Area B, quarter of the West Bank, comprises of village and rural areas. Israeli and Palestinians cooperate there, but the Palestinian authorities manage all civil affairs. Israel is in control of the movements and goods of the individuals. Area C makes up remaining of the land and mostly consists of pastoral areas.
I mean, I don't know what he's debating anymore.
Is under full Israel control, although the Palestinian authorities provide education, medical services to the 150,000. I mean, and then it shows kind of like how it's divided in between each other. While most of the West Bank is under Israeli control, you have individuals in the Gaza Strip and a few within the West Bank that are under Palestinian control.
no idea
I
what he's
can see
saying.
that argument. However, in regards to like the Gaza Strip and whatever remaining territories within the West Bank, those individuals fall underneath the Palestinian Authority and not the Israelis.
Okay, but do you recognize what I said to you, that the Israeli state is the one that gives them their classifications? The Israeli state is the one that they have to register to, and
Can you? Yeah. I hear you. Could you send it over? Because I still can't find it. I mean, I think I said it before in the beginning. For me, like one of the biggest difficulties was that there's just so much information that like.
no problem.
I'm not saying you're not wrong. I just need to see it because I was looking up the different 5 classifications, but nothing's showing up.
What's the argument?
Let me also look
You
over
haven't-
here.
Okay, I'll find it for you here.
Yeah. No, it's not that I haven't done my research. I have done my research. The thing is that, again, like, this is a very vast and difficult concept in regards to, like, trying to get and gather all the information needed of citizens in Israel. Because, okay, here's the thing. If that was the case, then yes, it would fall under. Where I'm finding difficulty trying to, like, see the apartheid state is the fact that it's a systematic repression towards a certain community, not allowing them to have a legal representation. They're kicked out of the economy. Like, they have no power whatsoever, which would kind of be one of the reasons why apartheid was considered.
Okay, let's
under
give it to
international
you.
law.
Let's give it to you that the PLO is the one that is full control over the Gaza and the West Bank and the territories, even the Jerusalem. Let's give it to you. I don't agree with that, but let's give it to you. What about what do you think about your stand then? Because this actually proves my point that Israel is the one that takes control over all of these territories. What about what would you say about the statement that Israel now is getting rid of Hamas and they are gonna indefinitely be the authorized governance over that new territory that they're gonna leave a vacuum in? Does that not clearly show to you that the Israeli government is the state that actually governs those people? If its work right now, if its job right now is pushing to get rid of Hamas so they can take control over that area, Is that not a sign that they are the ones governing and they're the ones issuing those authorizations? So let's give it to you that PLO is doing that right now. Very soon they're not going to be doing that. So we have to
Right.
look at these Israeli laws. Do you understand?
Yes, I hear your argument. In regards to the PLO, I know the PLO is over in the West Bank. It's the Hamas is within the Gaza Strip. I mean, that's what I was arguing. I didn't want to get confused. For me, I mean, I was just looking at the few laws that were passed, such as the mandatory evacuation law within 1950, land acquisition, and citizenship. Oh, actually, wait, no. Like looking at, oh yeah, law of return and law of return. Like with those four laws, it happens after every conflict. In regards to this current conflict with October 7th, what they are arguing is the sense of safety and security that by eradicating Hamas, by occupying the Gaza Strip, it does provide a sense of stability and security. How that falls, I mean, that is an example of war, not exactly an example of apartheid. This is why I would argue that.
But that is an example. What we're contending now is you're saying the PLO is governing over West Bank and Gaza. They're the ones that classify the people as what they want to be classified as, and they're the ones that give them their rights. I'm telling you, let's give you the argument. Let's give you the PLO is the one that gives the Palestinians their rights. But they're not going to be that very soon. So we need to be looking at the laws that the Israelis have in their books, because they're going to be governing this area very soon, and we need to see how they're going to be governing the area. From my standpoint, the laws are going to be extremely oppressive against the Palestinian people. I can see it, because they're second and third class citizens. They're not part of the Israeli government. They're never going to be accepted in the Israeli government. The Knesset forced them to never be accepted as a citizen. So imagine now, let's try to compare this to America. Let's try to compare America took over the land from the Native Americans. But now imagine the Native Americans, every single day, they get driven out of their reservoirs. They're second-class citizens. They're not sovereign citizens, which is even one step higher than any other citizen in America. No, they're actually below. They're second-class citizens. They're below any other citizen in America. Imagine the Native Americans. They're second-class citizens. Every day they get kicked out of their reservoir because they themselves cannot go and create the permits they need to keep their homes that they've been living in for years, because they are second-class citizens, because the classification does not allow them to buy this piece of land anymore. So they have to basically give up their homes. Imagine that if they are always have no basically any American, sorry, I'm not sure what happened here. Any person can any person that's not American can any person that has any heritage. I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but is this camera frozen? I think it's camera.
All right, I'm back. But yeah,
yeah.
So imagine if in America, the Native American who existed there has less rights than the new person that just showed up in America today on a boat because of their religion or their ethnicity. That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
That's what we need to be relating to. So in America, if we see something like that, we would call this absolutely an abomination. This is not allowed. You're not allowed to segregate between a Native American and an American because they are Native American. You're not allowed to do that, even though America is a colonial power as well. So we have to relate that again to Israel. Israel is not allowed to create these classifications. I get it. They're in the middle of the war, but it seems like they're exasperating on these classifications, and so we should not be on the side of Israel here. We should be on the side of South Africa. We should be on the south side of the one that declares that this is an abomination. We should remove it from existence. We shouldn't be helping it and pushing it through. You see what I mean? That's why the South Africans, I believe, are the ones that created the ICJ court case. And that's my argument. My argument is if South Africa is the modern example of apartheid, if we do not accept apartheid in any other state today in this world, and if South Africa today is telling you there is apartheid there, and they give you reasons, they say they're blockaded from food and water, the Israelis are committing a genocide, killing so many people, the Israelis are too much strong force over them, there's no proportionality. When they start lining those up, this lines up with my case. When the South Africans come up and go to the ICJ courts and say, hey, this state is committing genocide. This state is an apartheid state. We were apartheid. We know because we were apartheid. They are committing apartheid. They're blockading the food. They're blockading the water. They won't let them get electricity. And this is all in the ICJ court case. So even South Africa stands on my side. Now let's give you the PLO recognizes and controls that, but we would still not accept that. We would not accept that they're being defined as second-class citizens because they were there before. We would not accept that Native Americans being classified as second-class citizens. Why would we accept the Palestinians to do the same with them?
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I hear you. The historical example, the reason why it doesn't falls a little flat in regards to Native Americans and the Americans is the fact that the Native Americans
just an
honestly.
example. It's just an analogy.
Yeah, no worries. But I mean, just as an like, I'll show you why. Because with the Native Americans, they really couldn't do much to stop it. At least with
Palestinians too.
Palestinians and Hamas, with the Palestinians and Hamas and the PLO, they actually can hit back. But not only that, they set
Every
Israel.
time they hit back, you call them a terrorist state.
Huh? I'm not calling them that.
Israel government calls them terrorist state and they start bombing into them every time they hit back. They're not even allowed the resistance movement. They're not even Hamas is the resistance movement. They're not even allowed that.
Well, the thing is that from the research that I've done in regards to like seeing that this is an apartheid state, I mean, I'll go to your example then kind of lead it back into there. For example, like Hamas actually has some support within America. They have external support from outside their borders, trying to pressure them internally. That's why we have the whole ICJ going on. In regards to is this an apartheid state? The reason why I don't really necessarily agree, but I can see your point. Where I don't really agree is the fact that Hamas is in charge of those Palestinians and Israel is in charge of its own citizens. And in closing, if you bringing October 7th into an example, Israel was able to effectively eliminate most of its command structure. But in return, because that happened, now practically the entire strip, to my knowledge and what's available as an open source intelligence, is showing that the lack of coordination is showing the fact that Israel did remove most of its command structure, which shows that Hamas did have a lot of governance within those borders within the Gaza Strip. But as a result, what's been going on is that it's leading to other issues that Israel has to currently
contend with. That Israel was running too wide. Maybe they were too thin. And they needed to retract some forces. Israel does that all the time. They push people, soldiers in really, really far. Then they pull them back a little bit. Then they push them far again. Then they pull them back a little bit. This is just another act of aggression. So I get it. It looks like to you they're pulling out, but maybe they're just pulling out so they can push further again. So I mean, this is what I'm saying. So we're looking at what appears to be. So we have to look at what is. We have to look at the law. We have to look at what is happening today. I even gave it to you. Let's say the PLO is the ones that are ruling over them. What's going to happen if they don't rule over them? What's going to happen very soon? Because they are going to win the war. Israel is going to win this war. There's no way they can't because they have the power. What's going to happen after? They're going to take full control of Gaza. And what do you believe then? Do you believe maybe then Gaza could be in apartheid? In apartheid, if they're being completely ruled by the governance that won't give them any rights, they're finally being controlled by the government that does not allow them any rights because they won't let them to be second or third classes. As a Gaza or West Bank territory resident, you're not allowed to become even a Jerusalemite anymore. You can't be a second class citizen, you're a third class citizen. So I'm not sure why every time I touch my computer, my thing turns
on. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
But do you see what I'm saying? Very soon the government is going to take over. This government that you keep saying is not authorized to take over, or is not actually taking over, or is not actually the head of Palestine right now. I'm telling you right now, very soon they're going to be taken over. So we should be looking at their laws. Are those laws going to create any? Are those laws forcing and are already creating? From my perspective and from my argument is the laws they have on the books before they even take over the state of Gaza, or the territory. The laws they have on the books are already extreme apartheid, and so when they do take over Gaza, it's just going to be an absolute abomination. It's going to be really, really bad. So you are arguing, well, PLO is the one over Gaza right now, and the PLO is the one that gives them their rights, and PLO is the one that the Israeli authorities, I guess, go talk to when they need anything done. What I'm telling you is, okay, let's give you that. Let's say the PLO gives them their rights. Let's say that PLO is the one that makes them citizens of the Gaza territories. Very soon that's not going to happen. So very soon Israel is going to be the one taking over.
Right.
So my argument is going to stand. My argument is going to be that Israel, the oppressive force that won't give them any rights to these people, are going to be ruling over these same people. What you got to say against that?
Okay, well, so I'll say one thing. I'll jump into it. So first, for clarification, if I misspoke, the PLO is over in the West Bank, Hamas is in the Gaza Strip. Those are two, just moving forward, because I think...
But your argument was that that the government of Gaza and the territories is strong, and they are the ones that give the classifications to the people. I'm telling you, my argument was that they're
Yeah.
so it doesn't
So
matter. Yeah. Anyways.
well, I mean, so my thing is this in regards to the whole issue with apartheid. So, I mean, to my knowledge, in regards to looking at this case in these case studies, apartheid only applied with South Africa with its own citizens. One of the biggest issues in regards to this is Israel. Israel has its own citizen. Hamas has its own citizens within the West Bank and also with the PLO. But moving forward, in regards to the future, I think we both can agree, regardless of what's going to happen, Israel will take over the Gaza Strip. That's just like that. Nobody can deny that. That being said, future laws that are enacted, depending on it, I mean, maybe, possibly, but those laws haven't been enacted yet. And even then, with all this international pressure, I doubt they would go to that far of an extent.
So I have proof that they've been enacted. How people get evicted every single day because they can't get the permits, because they are from a certain class, they are not allowed to even purchase these permits, and they've lived in the homes for hundreds of years. But there's a new state that governs the home, so they have to take these permits. There's a lot of cases that I can show you today that the system of government is very oppressive against one people and not against the others. And other people can live very happy. Now, I want to talk about your argument in South Africa. You mentioned that the
Right.
South Africans were not apartheid against, but I think that's exactly what happened. I think that the colonial force wanted to segregate, so they gave it's the exact same situation in Israel. They gave the minority, they brought in some new minority colonialist settlers, they gave them the majority of this partitioned land, and and then it created a lot of issues. So I'm actually surprised that you're saying that the South Africans were not the ones being the ones feeling all the racism. They are, and it's, you know who gave them the racism? A brand new state that they've never recognized, that just showed up one day in front of their homes and started telling them this is how you're gonna live. Actually, I'm not gonna lie, the British have always ruled that land. I guess they always had some rule. They always had some footprint there, but that doesn't mean they have they nobody gave them the right to create those laws. So
Okay.
I'm actually very surprised by the argument.
Hey, so again, I'm not sure if I said that correctly. South Africa is one of the only modern cases of apartheid following the 2002 Rome Statute that we're basing apartheid off of. But because one of the biggest issues in regards to that, if we're basing off of South Africa, it's completely different from what's going on with Israel and Palestine. That's what I'm
how is it
arguing, at least.
To me,
Well, when
it's
you look,
exactly the same. To me, it's a colonial state, came in, settled in this area almost the same year by the same colonialist power, British powers. Then they created laws, segregated those people, cut them to two pieces. What's different about them?
well, what's different is that South Africa was actively oppressing the blacks within their own country. You do see laws within their books that blacks had no economic power, they had no ability to represent themselves in government,
Do you know that
no
the
ability
Jewish
to fight back.
militias? Do you know the Jewish militias before the UN partition was always oppressing the Palestinians, and there was always problems with the British trying to stop these Jewish militias, which is the exact reason why the British did not allow the two-state solution. They had to get kicked out because they recognized that these militias are extremely violent against the Palestinians, and they recognize the Palestinians are not going to be accepting of this. So actually, they were being oppressed by the settlers that showed up. The people that lived in that area were being oppressed by settlers. It was so bad the British had to stop the two-state solution. They actually stopped it, which got them kicked out.
So I pulled it up. The Jewish forces were composed of the Haganah, the underground militia, the Jewish community in Palestine, two other small irregular groups, the Irgun and the LEHI. The goal of the Arabs was to initially block the partition plan to prevent the establishment of the Jewish state. In regards to that it's a lot different than apartheid because it's a government entity, as within the definition. It's trying to maintain its regime by oppressing the other individual states. When it comes to these individual organizations that are militia groups trying to stop everything, it's a little bit different in regards to that the state is oppressing its own citizens.
But there was no state back then. There was no state of Israel. It had to be partitioned by the United Nations. So whoever these militias were, whoever these militia settler wars, they were settler colonials. It's exactly the same situation with South Africa. They were not a state yet. They were being racist against you. I'm telling you the history of South African apartheid. Okay, it's not 1949 yet. This is before 1949. They were very racist against the settler colonials. The Dutch and the British were very racist against the blacks. And then it all exasperated into 1949, the National Party. But before that, they were very oppressive against them. Before the state even was created, they were very oppressive. It's just you have to be a colonial settler. That's it.
Right, yeah, I hear that argument. For me, what I'm bringing up over here isn't the fact that they have one group establishing dominance and power over the other. prior to the establishment of Israel, you have Jewish militias and Arab militias going at each other. From what I'm seeing over here, I need to look into this more, but from what I'm seeing with evidence presented, is the fact that it's not one massive government entity bogging down on another individual. From the looks of this, just by looking at this alone, it's just it's militia groups going at each other, preventing each other from establishing
So
dominance of the other.
let me just tell you one thing, okay? So we need to then know a little bit about the history of the Israel state, okay? It started with Herzl in 1896. He came up with the first congregation of Jews in Sweden. He said, for some reason, I don't know why, he was an atheist, but for some reason he's like, if we want to stop getting oppressed in Europe, we have to commit our own state, okay? So from that day, 1896, they've been investing heavily into creating a Jewish state. That's why we believe now. That's why you see a lot of very strong Jewish entities now, because that was their goal, and they've worked it for 100 years. And when you do something for 100 years, you can become very good at it. Okay, so they've been investing very heavy into it. So for the past 50 years, Belford has been, Herzl has convinced very strong Jewish entities and state political people, statesmen, to start investing into the movement of creating a Jewish state. Okay, then to act like the Palestinians were the same exact power as the colonial settlers, that's not accurate at all. The colonial settlers had a lot of money. The colonial settlers were allowed to get their own militias, and they were allowed their own weaponry, because the Brits really liked them. The Brits liked the settlers. The Brits were with the settlers, but then what happened was the Brits wanted to create some more order, and then that's when they got kicked out. But what happened was the Brits are actually with the settlers, so they gave them their ability to create their own settlements. They gave them their ability to create their own governments. They gave them the ability to create their own institutions, and slowly they were getting more weapons, more power. But at the same time, they were the force over Palestinians. They were the ones controlling the Palestinian people. They were the ones forcing the Palestinians not to have a power. They were not allowing them to build any weapons. So at the same time, the British had full control of the Palestinians. At the same time, the Jewish state was getting stronger and stronger from investments from different reasons for tens of years, as well as they allowed them the freedom to get stronger. So to act like those two forces at the time, 1948 or 1947, was the same exact in power and equal in power, I do not agree with that at all. What's your evidence?
For me, is that during the Arab Revolt, now that you had an Arab sense of identity and nationality, it almost fell apart because of the Psycho-Pax Agreement, and also with the Balfour Declaration. You're cutting in and out. Yeah, after those two, after those two incidents, what ended up happening after, I think whoever was the supposed Arab kingdoms, one of his sons ended up establishing, I think it was either Syria or Iraq. I need to look into it. But as a result, this started to kick down and begin what is now unfortunately one of the biggest tensions with the Middle East and with the West. But that being said, for me, is that, hey, they're already armed. You already have well-trained militias from the Arab Revolt, trained by both the British and by both united within the Arab insurgency. As a result, now you kind of unfortunately the groundwork was laid out.
They were trained in 1917. They were trained in 1914 to before 1914. So they were trained for the World War I. They were trained for the Abbasid War. Okay. The Ottoman War. They were trained for that war. Yeah. That war is already done. So from 1917 to 1949, they've been, or 1947, they were not allowed any power. They were being controlled completely. So we're talking. You're right. They were, I guess, trained, but then very quickly they just lost all that power, and it was for a long time, for 30 years after. So you're right. There's a 30-year gap between their training and their power and the colonials coming in and murdering them.
Let me look this up before. Let me just at least get the timeline right, so I don't.
I'll give you the timeline. The timeline is Herzl is 1967. You can read.
Sorry, the Arab Revolt. That's what I meant.
The Arab Revolt. 1914. What happened was the British colonial and France colonials and all the colonial states were able to convince the Arabs to go ahead and come and help them kill the Ottomans, get rid of the Ottomans, and then they convinced them how. They told them, every one of you will give you a state, will partition to you a state. So the Arabs agreed and they followed along and they got rid of the Ottomans, but not understanding that the British were they were going against them. They had other deals with the Jews, they had other deals with other nations, the Dutch, the other colonial nations, and so they didn't know that. So what happened was they were actually backtrack. So what happened is Balfour, 1867 is Herzl, War 1914 is World War One with that's after they convinced them. 1917 Balfour declares after the World War One is finished, he declares the Palestinian state to be the Jewish state, and then 1939 the Brits get kicked out. 1947 the United Nations comes in, takes power over, or at the same time the Brits come leave, they give the United Nations the power, which was the League of Nations, which is actually the entity that divided all the nations, the Arabic nations, to what they are now. And then till now the United Nations is on top of that. So that's the history of the actual fight, or the actual.
Yeah. So I pulled up my notes on it. So it was actually Iraq. Sorry, Fasil. Forgive me if it's wrong. Fasil the first. I mean, for me, what I was arguing is that from 1916 to 1918 was the Arab Revolt. Following after 1918, once this all came to light, hey, we were betrayed. Then it kicks off a new series of wars. So, for example, I know for a fact with Fasil first of Iraq, establishing the state of Iraq, he got very upset. Obviously, led a revolt, did the best he could. Didn't work, but the reason why I'm bringing that up is the fact that following from the Arab Revolt, now you have a series. Now you have Arab veterans from this insurgency, and as a result, they have militias within the territory. And prior to the establishment, you do have paramilitia groups within the Middle East vying over control. Now, granted, I mean, this is a whole another topic, but bringing it back to the state of apartheid, I mean, one of the biggest difficulties now is that, I mean, look, I love history. Historical context is extremely important in regards to this. 100%. The issue is now currently what we're facing with regards to the charge of apartheid is the fact that what Israel laws, could it be just seen as discriminatory? I mean, I've heard the arguments, but does it rise to the level of apartheid within the international community?
Yeah, okay.
And the thing is, and I'll close off with this. With the ICC and the ICJ, correct me if I'm wrong, apartheid's only mentioned once from South Africa. The rest of it was making another case. For me, it's like, well, arguing the case of apartheid would go hand in hand with trying to argue that Israel is committing. Wait, hey, before I say it, is this being streamed on YouTube or is this a pre-recording?
Yeah, this is being streamed on YouTube. Be careful.
I'll say.
Okay, yeah, the G word. Yeah, sorry, G word is very obviously censored. So yeah, because they were trying to argue for G word.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's actually censored. Okay. Yeah, that's what I saw.
I know it's one of them. Yeah, that's
what I saw. They were actually arguing, but they actually, in the argument, they actually made a very clear argument for apartheid. They actually, in the third, I think their third argument or argumentation, or one of their third statements was that the blockade is the blockade on the Gazan people of food and water was inhumane. So that's another part. We could look into that. Yeah, maybe we can look at the G word. You're right, but we could look into the ICJ case. They actually made a mention of the blockade that Israel had enforced over the Palestinian people, over Gaza and the West Bank. So my question is, if the entity is that strong, they can actually commit. You're right. The ICJ, maybe they're not talking about apartheid, but they actually mentioned the same arguments I'm mentioning here. They mentioned that they're the controlling power. First of all, they're the controlling entity. They're the ones that have full power, full authority. They're non-proportional in power. And then second of all, they are bad. They're malicious. They're actually, with their power, blockading the food, blockading the water, and they're starving the people. And they actually use this argument. They use it for the G word, but you can also use it for the apartheid word, which is collective punishment. They actually use the word collective punishment. They're trying. That's what the argument was. That the blockade is a form of collective punishment. And so you see what I mean? Even you're right. They might not be talking about the case of apartheid, but they actually mentioned a lot of my arguments. They mentioned that the Israelis are blockading and are creating a lot of oppression over the people. Who gave the Israeli Authority that? It's not the Palestinian Authority that gave them that. The Palestinian Authority has no power over the Israeli Authority. The Israeli Authority is the state of power, is the state that creates all authority. And so it's the entity that describes to every human being there how they're going to live. So if that entity from the beginning, from its conception, is an extremely divisive entity that's trying to kick these people out of their homes, and then they're trying to bring these new people in, and we can see that because the old layer laws are insane. To become an Israeli citizen, you just have to be a Jew that loves being Jewish. You just have to be a Jew that loves Jews, and you have to just say, I want to be in my ancestor land. But as a Palestinian, you have no rights anymore. You can't even buy the permits for your already created houses. The Israeli government is blockading you. So actually, I get it. They're not exactly talking about the apartheid, but they do mention a lot of my points. And I think that you have to agree with me that this is a state of emergency. This is a state of oppression. This is a state that an entity has full power over another entity. And what do we call that when they're very malicious with that power? What do we call that when they are not going to give any the non-settlers any leeway? What do we call that? That's what I'm talking about. That's the labeling should be an apartheid state.
Right. Yeah. I hear it. In regards to like again going back to that definition though, I mean, does it
Guys, what do you
constitute
think about the debate?
does it constitute the Rome Statute that we agreed
is a
on?
serious debate.
Again, committed in the context of an
Comment down below what
institutionalized
you think
regime
about
of
the
systematic
debate.
oppression or domination by one racial group over another racial group or
Yeah.
groups committed with the intention of
But we have to
maintaining the
talk about
regime.
the laws. We have to talk about the laws, but you don't want to talk about the laws.
Well, no, I do want to talk about the laws.
Okay,
I mean,
can we
you
talk about
mentioned
the laws? Can we
yeah,
talk about the marriage law?
yeah. So the marriage law in regards
The
to
mixed
Israel, do
marriage
you know the
law,
full
in
name?
Israel, you're not allowed to interfaith marriage. It's not legally recognized if you commit it in Israel. How is that? That actually is exactly the same law, and I'll give you the name of the law. It's called the Prohibition of Mixed Marriage Act from 1949 from the South African apartheid state. That's the exact same law. It's almost the same exact wording. Can we talk about that at least?
Sure, yeah.
All right. So what do you think about that? How can you prove to me that if this law existed in South Africa, it exists today I don't think there's a single state in the universe that says interfaith marriage is illegal. Give me one state in this universe that does not recognize interfaith marriage. Can somebody give that to me?
It was America prior to Loving v. Virginia. Prior to Loving v. Virginia, there was no
Yeah,
interracial
but
marriage.
America is a
Then,
colonial power, so you're actually giving me my point again. My point is the apartheid system is a system of oppression created by colonialists. They have to create that system because they have to oppress the people that they're taking over. So you're giving me my point again. You're right. It was in America because it was an American colonial, because America was a colonial power.
well, my thing is this in regards to the Marriage Act. I mean, it says it prohibits interfaith marriages, same-sex marriage, and marriage for people who don't belong in recognized religion or denomination. But the thing is that it's not to a specific group. I mean, just from what I see alone. I mean, like from this alone, from what I am seeing.
But you have to understand, in South African apartheid, it also discriminated against the whites. The whites couldn't fuck around with black people. It also discriminated against the whites. So it's just because it doesn't, you know what I mean? Just because the Israeli also feels it, doesn't mean that it's not apartheid.
No, so
The
I mean,
whites
what
couldn't
I'm
fuck
arguing
the
is that.
blacks.
Yeah, but that's the thing with the whites can't be with blacks within the apartheid system. But when it regards to Israel, from what I'm seeing, Jews
thing.
can't be with Christians, Christians can't be with Muslims, Muslims can't be with Jews, all this other sort of interracial thing.
Same
But the thing is,
system.
because it's not specific towards one minority group, rather than it's just spread out significantly, it doesn't rise to the level of apartheid. Do you see what I'm saying?
Right? Very interesting.
Because apartheid refers to a specific group. It applies to a specific group. Do you see what I mean?
I'm not really sure. So you're saying, yeah, but it wasn't to like the South African law was not only the blacks that live in the southern part of South Africa. That's not how it was. It was all blacks cannot deal with all whites. That's how it was. So it's
But do you see-
basically. It's a way to keep people away from each other. It's a way to make sure that the governments are segregated from one another. So you're right. Maybe it's not one by one, but also in South Africa, it wasn't one by one either. It wasn't like the southern blacks can marry and with whites, but the northern blacks can. No, it was all people all together, just segregated, and they want to do that. That's what apartheid is. The apartheid, again, we're talking about systemic, institutionalized segregation, separation of two people, so they can live independently from one another. For me, when you tell me interfaith marriage is not allowed, it doesn't matter if it's 100 million religions. That means you're creating a law on the books that creates more segregation, and those are all apparent, clear examples for me that Israel is creating apartheid. I really am surprised that you cannot see that.
Well, no, because here's the thing. Like maybe. Well,
Guys,
let me try to
I'm
get him
destroying him.
a bit there.
I'm
With
destroying
apartheid
him.
with South Africa, whites and blacks can't be together. But according to this marriage law, it's not two
I'm
specific groups
destroying
can't be
him.
together. It's more of two people of different faiths can't be together. So a Jew can't get with a Christian, Christian can't get with the atheist, so on and so forth. But it doesn't recognize the religious law. Do you see how it's not specifically targeting a specific group? Because
Okay,
according to like
no.
the
Yeah, but
wait, wait, wait.
we never agreed on the definition that it has to target a racial group. We agreed it has to be target an ethnicity. We never. I don't know when we agreed the definition of apartheid is a racial group. I agree it was an ethnicity.
Isaac, was it this one? Was it because I'm looking at the 2002 Rome Statute? That's why committed in the context of an institutionalized regime of systematic oppression and domination by one racial group over another racial
You're
group
using
or
the
groups
word racial.
committed with the
Let's
intention.
expand that. Let's expand the word racial to everybody.
Also, I do
Well, yeah,
want to
but-
all
say,
ethnicities.
in
Sorry,
terms
what was
of
that,
the
Isaac?
marriage law, in terms of the marriage law in South Africa, it wasn't just that whites couldn't get with black people; it was that whites couldn't get with those classified as non-whites. So it wasn't.
Oh,
picking up
okay.
two specific
I stand corrected.
So
that law as well.
even better for me.
Well, no, but
Even
you see,
system of oppression.
well, no, what I'm trying to get at is like using
No,
that definition of
no.
apartheid.
You
Yeah.
know what's so crazy? The
What?
actual settler colonialists were discriminating against the settler colonialists. Oh my god, the apartheid.
Well, I'm trying to pull it up. Like South Africa's prohibits marriage, whites and one
That's
nights. This is
amazing.
an act of one.
How did he not?
But you see how it places whites in a category of trying to keep themselves pure. That's what I'm trying to get at.
And that's exactly why the law of mixed marriage is the exact same law in Israel today. They want to keep those people segregated. They want to keep the Jews. You have to understand, the Jewish state is not a black or white state. It's a ethnic state. It's a religious state. So what they care about is the religiosity. They don't care about your color necessarily. They care about your ethnicity, your religious background. And so they're discriminating on that end. They're not discriminating on the racial. So let's expand that definition of apartheid.
Well, I mean, look, so I mean, because I'm reading over here, yeah, prohibited with whites and non-whites, but it's targeting. Like, it says one specific group cannot be with others. I mean, with the marriage law with Israel, it's necessarily of no other intermingling with different religions or beliefs. These are not immutable
This
characteristics.
debate's gonna put me on the map. Okay, no problem. This debate
Yeah,
gonna
committed in
put
the
me on
context of an
map.
institutionalized regime of systematic
I'm a
oppression,
gangster.
domination by one
I'm
racial
a
group
gangster.
over
I'm a
another
thug.
racial group
I
or groups
destroyed this
committed with the
dude.
intention of maintaining that regime.
I eliminated this guy from existence.
What was the other laws that you mentioned? Because I remember, because I have that one over
Sure,
here
let's
in
talk
regards
about
to.
more laws. Let's do. What about? There's so many, but here I have one here. What about, for example, the Separation of Voters' Rights Act, the Separate Representation of Voters Act? Look that up. Separate Representation
sure.
of Voters Act. It was a law created to basically remove the rights of those non-whites from voting. They don't want the non-whites to vote anymore. They only want the whites to govern that state of South Africa. Which is another reason why they're apartheid. And I actually linked it exactly to the exact Israeli regime today. Because of your classifications, this is why it's so important to understand classifications of residency and citizenship in Israel, because that's what is going to give you your rights. It's your classification. That's why I keep telling you this is an apartheid state, because your classification tells you how you're going to live your life. As an Israeli citizen, you have the best classifications, but then you go lower and lower. So when you come down to the Separate Representation of Voters Act, when we go down to third-class citizens, the other territories in Gaza and West Bank, they have no rights to vote for Israeli elections. They have no rights to vote for municipal elections. And they also have no rights to vote for their own actual Palestinian elections anymore ever since 2003. So this is another law showing you that they're removing their power of representation from the people that already existed in that land. Do you see?
What was the bill called again? Is this in
it's
Israel?
called the Separate Representation of Voters Act. I think it was 1959.
Let me see.
Separate representation
It
of voters.
doesn't matter that much. I mean, 1951, repealed in 1970 in South Africa. Does Israel have this one? Because I'm looking it up.
Okay, it's not the exact same law. What I'm telling you is I'm relating them to. They might change the law's name, but I'm telling you the actual law. I'm not giving you the name of the law. I'm telling you, I'm giving you the name of the law. Then I'm describing the law, and I'm describing the law in Israel as well. So the name of the law might change, but if you write the description of the law, you'll see it in Israel as well. I'm
Okay,
sorry,
let me
man.
see.
I can't. I wish I was next to you so I can show you all of this right now, or I can get.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, you're fine, you're fine. Yeah, because
What
I'm
the
trying to look
fuck,
up too. I'm
man?
like,
Do you
dang,
want
this
me
is
to
a lot.
sit here and
In regards to, because for me, what I was, in preparing for this debate, I was
Yeah, what
looking
the
at
fuck
in
did you prepare
regards to the
for? I'm actually
representation,
very
in
interested.
regards
How
to
did you prepare for this debate?
So for me, I was looking at JSTOR, Google Scholar, looking at the laws. I'm just looking at the definitions. For me, as someone with a pre-law and interest degree, as part of an interest in one of my degrees, one of the things that I was looking up was like definitions is very, very important in regards to the systematic and all this other stuff within the national community. I think I said it before in the beginning of my opening statement. The hardest thing is to hit every single one of these markers, and in regards to the ICC and ICJ, South Africa is going to have difficulty. I mean, just an example I can bring here. Proving G word, you need a lot of things in order to prove it. And in regards to with
Guys, I
apartheid, you need
destroyed him. He literally
a
lost the
complete
debate.
systematic set of laws. I think one of the
I
things where
destroyed him.
Israel
He gave up.
can argue it has a strong case against it is the fact that it does have strong representation from Arabs, from other individuals that aren't
He gave
Jewish
up.
within their community. They do have the political representation.
So you want to argue that the ICJ? Sorry. I'm trying to be clear because
Oh, yeah.
let's not. I guess let's move away from the laws now. We don't want to argue the laws. What do you? I'm sorry. What do you want to argue?
Well, I mean, like, the laws are important, but in regards to political representation with the Knesset, Arabs do have that ability to speak out. I think even some of the most controversial laws that I would...
Can I ask you which classification of Arab is allowed the power to speak out? Can you look that up? I believe it's probably only Jerusalemite. I don't believe anybody from the other territories are allowed that representation in the Knesset. I really don't. Can you look that up? And if it is, I would really like to know. Because my understanding is if you're a Jerusalemite, yeah, you're allowed maybe to vote in municipal elections, but you're not allowed to vote in Israeli elections, and maybe you're allowed to get into the Knesset. But as other territories, as a Gaza and West Bank, you're not allowed any of those powers at all. Not anymore. Not since 2003. The Knesset passed something against that. That's my understanding.
I pulled this up. A Palestinian former Knesset member explains the delicate policies within this party. As an immigrant,
read it slowly and read it with like a little bit of passion, not like TikTok.
no, I ain't like you. I don't got that. I'm a bit nervous. So I mean, I pulled up just one example of an individual within the Knesset. A Palestinian former Knesset member explains explains the delicate politics within this party. It's very easy for Palestinians who live in Israel to be involved in politics, because everything in our lives is politics.
Okay,
I mean, I'm trying to look.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. But to live in Israel, if you're in other territories classified Palestinian, there's literally no way for you. Maybe if you're a Jerusalemite, yeah, they'll allow you to live in those territories. But as an other class, you have. This is why classification is so important. You know what I mean? This is why I'm surprised you didn't even look into this. As in other territories, this is what surprised me from my research. So when you told me that you were surprised, that's what I thought you were talking about. My research got me to understand that there's different classifications of a Palestinian. A Palestinian can be a Jerusalemite, which gives him a lot of rights. He can be in other territories. He can be a part of Gaza or West Bank, and then he could be a Palestinian but lives in other Arabic state, which gives him no rights whatsoever at all anymore. So this is very important distinctions. For example, I'll tell you why they're important. Because as a Palestinian, if you are part of the other territories, if you're Palestinian with the third classification, the other territories resident classification, you are not allowed to buy any piece of land in Israel. You're not allowed to live in Israel. So if you cannot live in Israel as an Arab, how are you going to be part of the Knesset if you cannot, because of your classification, live in Israel? So do you understand what I mean? So maybe the Jerusalemites, because they live in Jerusalem and it's part of Israel, they're accepted. But even that's a second classification, and I bet you it's even hard. So I really am interested. My only understanding is you have to be a Jerusalemite, which is the second classification. I don't think as an other territories, which is Gaza and the West Bank, if you're a resident of the other territories, I don't think you have any rights. I don't think you have rights to be in the Knesset. I don't even think you have rights to go into Israel. That's how big it is. Can you look that up, please?
So I looked this up. So this is actually a really cool website. I might send it after. So it says mapping Palestinian politics. So it's talking about the differentiation in the PLO groups, non-PLO groups, but Palestinian citizens in Israel. Palestinian citizens in Israel have the right to vote in Israeli elections since the first Israeli elections in 1949. During the military rule of 1966, Palestinian representation was largely organized through, oh wow, this is interesting, through the Communist Party or satellite factions within Israeli Jewish parties. The first independent Arab party that ran for the Knesset, Al-Ard, was outlawed outlawed within 1964. Okay, there.
Long
I mean, the thing is, I need to look this further. Israeli-Palestinian community policies are multifaceted with communist, socialist, nationalist, religious, secular, feminist, really, and other streams of thought.
What is he
In
talking
Palestine,
about?
because I'm trying to pull up the
gonna go
actual.
sleep.
That's one, and I'll send it over. But I'm trying to look up at the actual members of the Knesset.
Can you concisely? I don't even know what that means. I really don't. I'm sorry.
It's basically what it's basically arguing
yeah,
is that they do have the ability, they have the political power. Well, to an extent,
We
the
stand
political
with
power and the ability to have representation within the
Like
Israeli
and subscribe.
government.
Let's go,
But you see,
baby. We destroyed
that's
this
where it
guy.
kind of hits the apartheid argument a little bit, in the sense of these individuals do.
We destroyed the motherfucker. You keep talking, man. I don't care.
The thing is, I'm trying to look up the classifications, but I can't find it. I mean, I'm being genuine right now. I can't even find it.
Isaac, did you find the classifications of different residents of Israel? I'm surprised that people haven't found that yet.
Well, I mean, because like I'm trying to look it up, but I can't find it. I mean, let's see, parliamentary group. Okay, hold up, wait.
I can't believe it. The guy's not even ready for me. He's not ready.
Because the Knesset, Israel Knesset, Palestine. Is there resounding Knesset votes resoundingly against? Okay, that's not that.
Just look
Knesset
at different
party.
classifications of residents in Israel.
Okay, how about that? Different classifications for citizens in Israel.
For no, not citizens, but residents.
Residents. Is this gonna lead to an article? Like, is there a specific site?
Man,
Because
here, if you want, we can. I'll find this for you if
Yeah.
you wanna talk about something. Yeah.
yeah, because I mean, here, like, I'm more than willing to share. If Isaac, if it's cool with you, because I'm more than willing to show my screen. Because what ends up happening when I look it up is that it doesn't really show. I mean, unless I'm blind, I can't see it. Currently, right now, what I was trying to look up is the Knesset Party representation for Palestinians or Arabs.
So what you're trying to say is there is no representation of the other territories. The residents of the other territories is not a classification, and you're saying the Jerusalemite is not a classification. It's only.
Well, look, because the thing
what's
is,
the argument that the Israeli citizens the only classification? I'm not understanding.
Well, because the thing is with apartheid, like going back to some of my initial arguments, when it comes to the issue of apartheid, it's done to its own citizens. Because with South Africa, they were oppressing their own citizens. I mean, with Israel, in order to argue for apartheid, you need to show evidence that it's oppressing its own citizens. All of its citizens have equal representation under the law and all sorts of rights, economic. They're within society. They're integrated within. Okay. Because I'm trying to look at the different party. Oh, we got a lot. Okay. Here's something.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on the Arab?
Sorry.
Sorry, I'm wondering. What's your thoughts in regards to the United Arab List? Because it's one of the political parties within. Actually, hold up, wait. It's what? Yeah. So the United Arab List is an Islamist conservative political party in Israel and the political wing of the Southern Branch Islamist movement. 2021, it formed a coalition forming the 36th government and is led by Mansour Abbas.
So what's the question? I'm not sure. I'm not understanding.
I mean, like, what's your thoughts in regards to that? Because for me,
I
this
need to go
one of
find
the things
the
I'm bringing up is that
now.
Arabs and Arab citizens within Israel do have that ability to voice out their grievances within the political system.
I agree with you. There are areas that do that. But my thing is that the only people that are allowed that are Jerusalemite. There are classifications of people. The people are not allowed to freely walk around Israel whenever they feel like. If you're part of the other territories, you have no rights. I hear you, but the idea that because you're from this location and then that location is 10 miles away from you, you have no rights. I mean, that sounds insane to me. It doesn't matter if those guys have rights because the others don't.
I mean, because my thing is this. I wanted to hear your opinion. Within the United States, certain states have different laws that have to kind of like respect to one another. I mean, they do often tend to cross, which leads to Supreme Court arguments. So, for example, like the whole thing that kicked off gay marriage was Obergefell v. Hodges. one state recognized the marriage, but when he crossed over, the other state didn't. And so one of the reasons why I bring that over is because it's ruled by two separate different entities. I mean, granted, it's America, so it's a little bit different. But do you see what I'm trying to say? Is that a citizen within Israel and a citizen of Palestine, those two sort of conflict with one another? Because the arguments that I've been hearing and what I've been researching is the fact that they are trying to label apartheid in regards to the fact that what Israel is doing to Palestine is an example of apartheid. But what I'm trying to argue is not necessarily that wouldn't be the case, because it's not within its own. They're not citizens. If I'm trying to make that point clear.
I know, but that's the exact argument that South African colonialists said to South
Oh, let me
Africans.
look it up.
That's the exact same argument. They said, "Hey, what's wrong? Why do you not like us? You're not the actual party in power. So shut up and listen to us. We are the ones in power," and that's what made them stand up. And
I mean, for me,
get rid of the apartheid.
I mean, for me, it's because with South Africa, I mean, like, I'm gonna look this up because I might be wrong on this one. In regards to the fact of, it's like, oh well, if that's the case,
he was gonna muddy the
you're not a
waters.
citizen of
That's the
South
only way
Africa.
to
You
escape.
belong to someone else. I mean, the thing is, like, they're all within South Africa. In regards to this whole issue with Israel and Palestine, Palestine is its own separate organization, its own separate entity in regards to having its own government structures and everything like that. That's what I'm trying to argue.
Yeah, but-
I need to look this up though. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, me?
No, you're
I
fine,
thought
fine.
Isaac
I'm done.
was
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
something. I thought Isaac was saying. Okay,
Go
man,
ahead.
but that argument is just say that doesn't still disprove apartheid. So sure, they're a different entity, but that's still. But I already gave that to you. I gave that
Right.
they are governed by different people, but they're not going to be governed by different people anymore. So how are they going to be
Right.
treating those people when they govern them? We're already seeing that on the books. We're already seeing how they treat the people today, and we can already exasperate from that and understand what they're going to do in the future, and what the future looks like is bleak. So yeah, you keep saying that they're not the
Yeah.
governing power, but they're about to become the governing. Like, I don't agree, by the way, with that they're not the governing power. I actually believe 100% they're the governing power. When we didn't even talk about the blockade, but the blockade proves that they're the governing power, because even when the Palestinian Authority allows anything to cross through the Karni crossing, which is the only port of crossing, because there is no airport in Gaza or in the West Bank, when they allow for anything to cross through that, when the Palestinian authorities authorizes anything to go through, the Israeli government can still declare that this is not an acceptable item and pushes away. So it doesn't matter that the Palestinian Authority is the governing power when Israel actually overpowers that authority. So I understand you keep saying that they're two different entities, they live away from each other, this is a state and this is a state, but right now that's not what Israel recognizes. Israel's trying to take the state from Palestinians. They're trying to take it, and you're letting them do it. You are actually allowing colonialism, and you're muddying the waters for colonialism, and you're actually carrying weight and carrying water for colonialism. That's what you're doing. You're trying to when you're trying to exasperate. Oh, they're two different entities now. Yeah, but the government is the same. It's the one government that rules over both of these entities. And it gives one per section a preferential treatment, and it gives the other one go fuck yourself treatment.
Right. In regards to the blockade, I mean, if you're using that as evidence, I mean, one of the things in regards.
That's a
Yeah.
big
Okay.
evidence.
So I mean, in regards to that, I
It's the
mean,
evidence that the Israeli government is the authority over Gaza already. You're acting like they're not. I'm giving you the evidence that they are, because
Well,
they
I
can
mean-
override the Palestinian Authority.
it's not that they could override the Palestinian Authority. The blockade is in the sense of. I mean, well, I'm curious to hear why. Because I mean, for me, it's like what I pulled up. Like one of my.
don't know what
Let's
he's
see.
talking about.
One of the things that I pulled up and researched. Come on, pull it up. We are all having technical
I don't know
difficulties
what the hell
today.
he's talking about.
Oh, okay. Not all unequal
I'm not
lawful.
gonna
Not.
do this. I'm gonna.
Because the thing is that
watch
this is all in regards to like
I'm not
one of the issues and like complexities in regards to this conflict is the fact that you do have an insurgent group within like Hamas, which is the running government, but also is an insurgent group who is dedicated to the eradication of the state of Israel. It does cause issues within it.
Yeah, but the state of Israel is eradicating the state of Palestine. Already did.
Well, I think
So,
so. In regards to
that's why I
like,
keep saying you're carrying water for the colonial state, but when the oppressive power, when the resistant power stands up, you're like, no, that's wrong. Don't stand up. But you were totally
Actually-
cool. But you were totally cool when the oppressive colonial state came in and took all the land. You didn't say anything.
I don't think I argue that, but my thing is this.
Well,
In
you're arguing that
regards
Hamas
to
is a terrorist force. I'm arguing that Hamas is a resistance power. It's a resistance force, not a terroristic force. What's your argument that they're
I would
terroristic? And if your
I
argument
would
they're
call
terroristic is that they hit civil citizens, then America is terrorist. Then Israel is terrorist. Go ahead, give me your argument that what's Hamas? Why is Hamas terroristic entity? You haven't proven
well,
that
Hamas,
it's a terroristic entity.
well, I would argue more insurgent group. I don't like saying terrorist, but Operation Al I can't say this. Al
So you don't
Aqsa
agree
flood. How
they're
they
not terrorists? So you agree with me?
huh?
So
I
you
would
agree with me they're
say
not
insurgent.
terrorists?
I mean, here's the thing. Like, even
I'm not
like
gonna let.
example, like the debate is about apartheid, about the definition. To my knowledge, there's no definition of terrorism among the international community. That's why I'm trying to like
Okay,
not
I'm
touch
asking
it.
you. Do you agree? Is Hamas terroristic state or no? What do you? Is it a terroristic entity or no? Do they commit terrorism and why? Well, because you just
Give,
mentioned that they were a terroristic entity
Right.
that governs.
Give him your definition.
Or sorry,
of
you
what
said insurgent. I guess
consider
you're right.
terrorism, see if he fits that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Myanmar, give him your definition of terrorism, and then see if he would agree that it is that. Since he's saying that the problem is he can't grasp at a definition of terrorism.
Because he said there was a terroristic insurgent power. So how can you make that claim?
Well, I mean, I would argue Hamas is an insurgent group in regards to living inside the confines of Gaza is the sole purpose and fact that it doesn't have a standing military. That's how I would define it. In regards to currently on what's going on right now, Israel is currently fighting an unconventional warfare against Hamas.
So they are an insurgent group. I agree, but they're not terroristic. We agree there.
This is what I would.
We agree, right?
I would argue it is a terrorist group for the sole purpose and fact that you do have radical elements that do seek to eradicate the state of Israel.
I can say the same thing about the Knesset in Israel. There are radical elements. Yesterday, I just saw a video. I don't know if you did the research. The guy is saying, your grandchildren will die, your mother will die, your grandfather will die, all your kids are going to die, your grandchildren will talk about this day. Did you see that video?
I think I saw.
recently?
Well, I think I saw the video. That's one civilian. It's like, okay, in regards
they
to
were yelling at a Palestinian girl, woman, hijabi woman inside the Knesset very recently, telling her, we are happy about what's happening in Gaza. You will remember this till the last day. I swear to God, I just saw this. I can argue that
I'm not
the
gonna
same
be wrong. I
exact
just wanna
thing
see this.
happens. There are peoples inside the actual Knesset that are actually calling for the demolition and absolute eradication of the state of Palestine. Now, does that make the Knesset a terroristic entity? No. So
Well, I'm trying to look up
definition.
the reason why I'm very hesitant. I'm hesitant to label anything as terrorist is the sole purpose and the fact that for me, in regards to like the way I'll look at is the fact that I just call them insurgents, not necessarily terrorists, because well, how charged it is, because it does remove the fact like you look at the bigger picture.
In your TikToks, you've called them terrorists before.
Huh?
In your TikToks,
Sorry?
I've seen you. You've called them terrorists before in your TikToks.
If I have it, I'd probably argue given the fact that you do have elements where Hamas's goal stated within their charter, they do want to eradicate, I believe, the state of Israel and kill most Jews for the sake of it. I'm trying to see if that's censored. I don't think it is. But I mean, the reason why I would argue. Sorry, go on. I mean, I think I would argue.
Sorry.
No, you're fine, you're fine. I mean, I argue that it is for that sole entity and purpose. I mean, I think even Hamas's own admission on October 7th, they by their own admission, mistakes were made in regards to how the operation kicked off.
I'll even give it to you. The charter of Hamas says we want to eradicate Israel.
Oh, jeez.
I'll give it to you, but that doesn't mean they're a terroristic entity. That still can be a declaration of a resistance power. You have to clear. If we are creating an issue about what is an apartheid because of their intent, then we have to create clear intent of what is a terroristic or whatever that. Why is Hamas bad? Why are they not allowed to rule over Gaza? We haven't clearly identified that. Besides other people saying they're a terroristic entity, their insurgency doesn't mean they shouldn't rule over Gaza. But if anything, their insurgency should be the only. Should be the evidence that they should be the ones ruling over Gaza, because they're actually the only entity that actually is doing something about they're trying to find a solution. So their insurgency is defines that they are the only power that deserves to be recognized as the authority in Palestine. That's actually so when you say it's not the insurgency, that's not what makes them bad. It has to be the terroristic entity, but you haven't defined terrorism. And I'll give it to you. I'll say that the Hamas wants to eradicate Israel. That still doesn't define terrorism. That still could be a resistance force, especially when we recognize the Israel settler colonial state. It came in after Palestine. The Hamas was created to fight the oppression from that state. And so totally we can. There's no evidence that they're a terroristic entity. The evidence is showing that they're insurgent resistance force. And I'll give it to you. Their charter says we want to eradicate Israel, but that doesn't mean it's an apartheid. That doesn't mean it's a G word. That doesn't mean anything about that. They didn't say we want to eradicate every single citizen. They didn't want. They didn't say they want to. If intentions and definitions are so important, remember that's what really caught us in the beginning with apartheid. That has to be very important. We have to define terrorism. We have to define these bad and good groups. Okay, it's very important.
Yeah, no, yeah. For me, with October 7th was the indiscriminate killings. You do have so I'll go for example with the Algerian Civil War with the FLN during the Battle of Algiers. With this insurgent group, there was a specific command given: kill every man between ages of 18 and 40. Spare women, children, elderly, don't touch them. But in regards to this, what ended up happening on October 7th, anything and everything was fair game. As a result, you do have that. Now, I have seen some.
What's your proof of that? What's your proof that they did not use the same charter that they've already used? What's your proof that they did not use their already preconceived laws when they go into? So you're telling me before when they did other insurgent operations, they actually followed the rules, but this one they didn't. So I'm telling you, what's your evidence that they did not follow?
It wasn't the fact that they were following rules, but they had restraint towards it. That's one of the issues that Hamas lacked. Was on October 7th there was a lack of restraint. Even by their own admission, they admitted that there were a lot of bad mistakes.
So let's clear some things out. How many people died on October 7th? Because I want to get clear on this. I want to know which reporting should we listen to, because I heard a certain number. I want to know which number you're listening to, because if we see a big gap in the numbers, then we can understand there's a discrepancy in reporting, and we can also understand that maybe everybody. We know that the IDF soldiers were there, so maybe not everybody that was killed was part of the mission from Hamas. Maybe it was like a defensive operation from Israel. You get me? So we need to know exactly that. So what number do you have final? What's your final number?
I'm pulling it up from the Center for Strategic and International Studies. According to this, October 7th was the deadliest Israeli government. Most recent fatality estimates at 1,200. October attack is more.
I have recent reporting saying it's 800 to 850.
Where'd you get that from?
I recently read it. 800 to 850. That's the brand new number. Go look it up.
Yeah, I'm trying to look it up, but do you know where you got 800, 850 from? Like, who said it?
October 7th. It was during my research, but I don't remember the exact thing. I'm gonna try to find it again.
800. Yeah, I mean, but also
my final number, I think it was 800 people, and maybe even less.
Yeah, I mean, if you could send it over, I'd be interested. I mean, for me, because I'm pulling it up over here in regards to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, and they're also quoting from the Israeli government, where 1,200 people killed. And if I click on this link, it's also from an NPR, which claims from Tel Aviv that the Israeli Foreign Ministry said around 1,200 were officially killed.
This is all from the Israeli ministry. Yeah, that's what your numbers are. The Israeli ministry gave those numbers, and then there's another entity that gave different numbers. There's
but I mean, you know, and tying it back with the original theme of the whole debate in regards to apartheid. I mean, here's the thing: Gaza's going to be taken over by Israel. They're about to I think they approved Rafah. It's still I forgot, but in regards to the following laws that are going to happen right after, would it classify to the level of apartheid? For me, in regards, just looking back at Israeli history, every time when an operation has been won, there has been a series of laws that have been enacted where it was in response of trying to de-escalate or try to stop current or more ongoing conflicts.
All right, I guess the final number was about 1,000. Yeah, so I mean, I'm right in the middle. I said 800, you said 1,200. It's 1,000.
Yeah, I mean, it's still bad. Don't get me wrong, but
honestly, I don't know where I was going with that. Anyways, I wanted to see if we got the same reporting and if we have the same numbers. I just wanted to see if we were getting the same information. I think that's what it was.
Well, yeah, I think one of the biggest difficulties, I think all three of us can kind of relate to this, is the fact you cannot pull up correct information now, regardless of wherever, because this is information warfare. Everyone is spewing stuff out, and then come to find out weeks later, oops, wrong information. You know what I mean?
I recognized that during Ukraine. That was really heavy. You couldn't even trust any reportings. One day the ghost of Kiev would show up, and then the next it would be a video game, trailer. It was a crazy joke.
I think one of the biggest fake news I saw was a tank that accidentally ran over. like it swallowed the car pretty much. I mean, tank versus car bad. But then they're like, oh my god, a Russian tank, and then come to find out 3 weeks later, it was an actually Ukrainian tank. The guy didn't know how to drive. I was like, oh, dang it. But I mean, going back to all this, I think this is what kind of makes it a bit difficult for both of us. I think this makes it difficult in regards to trying to find accurate information. It's like, in regards to is Israel an apartheid, I think that's one of the challenges moving forward. Content creating, like we can't pull up the correct information because well, everything's a mess.
But did we get anywhere closer? Like from from my perspective, you came up with interesting arguments. You are saying the entity is not ruling over the state is not ruling over these people, and because they're not ruling over these people, they cannot be committing apartheid because this is a different situation than what was happening in South Africa. So at least we got somewhere. At least I understand a little bit more about your perspective. Do you at least give me a little bit of recognition that my arguments, my concerns are serious about the Israeli government taking over power in the Gaza Strip? Do you share with me any of those concerns, or do you just believe that Israel should just have those rights to just completely take over these lands and just do whatever they want with these other territories' residents?
For me, I think where sort of the contention lies is the fact that once this war is over, the series of laws that will be enacted, they have to like not overshoot it in regards. It's just really difficult because here's the thing: how do you balance out human rights versus the sense of security? That's been a common thing that I've seen among scholars where people that like I think we kind of see in this debate where the argument was this is for security and the other one was for debate.
Let me mention one thing. The Israeli Supreme Court already gave the answer for that. The Israeli Supreme Court, in one of their cases, recognizes as human rights violation are acceptable because our survival matters more. That's exactly the quote, and I can find. Man, I have to find so many.
Yeah.
I wish I actually kept the resources because I was doing so much. You know what I'm talking about. Literally, we had.
Oh yeah, no.
Stuff. But I swear to God, there was one case. I was like, does Israel care about human rights? I swear to God, there was a case where Israel's Supreme Court found that human rights violations are acceptable when in certain cases where our survival matters more. So they have already answered that question. Human rights doesn't matter. I've done this in one of my videos. Human rights does not matter anymore if they just have to use this word. Listen, and you know about this because you're a warrior. You went to the U.S. Army.
Yeah, and okay, just before I begin, like these are all my own opinions. It has nothing to do with any of this stuff. I have to put that disclaimer. I gotta put that disclaimer.
Okay. Listen.
Yeah.
So Israel. What was it? What did I say? I said what was the word? Where did I stop? God damn it, I forgot.
Security, safety, something?
National security.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly. The moment they changed the word from anything to national safety, security risk, or national security risk, it's immediate. No human rights are matter anymore. We can violate them because our survival matters more. This has already been declared by the Israeli Supreme Court.
Here's a good question to follow that then. Do you think that what happened in Palestine, do you think that does qualify as a national security risk, the Hamas attacks? Do you quantify that as a security risk?
No, I'll give you my answer. No, because this was happening in the occupied territories. It was a part of the non-legal settlements that were settled post the partition. This is not part of Israel. This is new settlements, the area that the attack happened. And so what you can recognize is if you recognize this is an attack against Israel, then you have to also recognize that Hamas is trying to take back its territory too, because this is not legal territory. If Israel was getting attacked, it's not legal area. Then Hamas, I believe, did not. Basically, this was not a national security risk because this was not Israeli territory. And even if it does happen in Israeli territory, to act like there's proportionality to the damage that we're seeing right now, I would never agree with this. Honestly, even if there is a national security risk to act like these 30,000 people, well, I don't know how you can even give that rationalization. Let's say there is a national security risk to do that to the people that you are observing and controlling over. I think that has to be the darkest thing I've ever seen in my life.
So, in regards to explaining like the Israeli strategy, so I actually had to look it up. I think this was one of my very first TikToks. people were kind of confused of how disproportionate the casualty rate was. Following the Lebanon War, they did adopt something called Dahia Doctrine, where they realized disproportionate force result in less attacks. So as a result, this is what we're kind of seeing going on. Assuming, like, there was no.
You condone what they did with Gaza post October 7. You actually are okay
I
with
mean,
what happened because it
well,
deteriorates more attacks.
Well, my thing is this: that I'm looking into the case. So one of the ICJs, one of the rebuttals from the Israeli side was the fact that we are this. This is one of the first times it's experiencing urban warfare in a modern scale in regards to seeing all the destruction, the civilian casualties, and whatnot, and the complications behind it. Well, this is like the first modern example of it. For me, it's just in regards to like the accurate reporting and information. I'm finding difficulty with all that other stuff. But in regards to what Israel is doing, I guess, like, but maybe for the first few months and weeks, there were a lot of critical mistakes made. But that's just more a reflection on the fact that this was like all done after the fact. Like they were honestly caught like by surprise in regards to the whole operation. Now things like they have advanced their capabilities. Now it's been getting a little bit better in regards to minimizing civilian casualties. But again, like it's
So
work
do
needs to
you
be done.
actually believe that was a national security risk? What happened in Palestine? Or what happened in Israel? October 7th.
In regards,
Do you believe
in a-
that you know what I mean? Like because
Yeah.
Israel believes because that was such a horrendous attack, they're justified to do what they did to Gaza. Do you believe it was a horrendous attack? Do you believe that there's a justification to the thing, or what do you believe?
Okay, in regards to sorry. Oh, sorry.
No,
Should I wait?
you can talk. I'm hearing
He's
you.
good.
I
His
just
camera's
need
about to
change.
die. You can see it in the top left.
Oh, I see it. No, okay. So on a tangent, I have a ZV1F. Man, like before getting on here, don't get a ZV1F if you're listening. In regards to October 7th, one of the reasons why it was such a horrendous attack was the fact that all of a sudden it happened so quickly. It was clearly a coordinated effort, clearly coordinated strikes that happened within in the state of Israel itself. That October 7th revealed massive security issues within the state of Israel. I wouldn't be surprised later on, moving forward, should they refine their tactics, refine everything, pass further stricter laws in an attempt to stop further October 7th attacks. I wouldn't be surprised.
We recognize those are illegal settlements that the attack happened, right? In
Illegal settlements? Sorry.
So like the area was not legal Israeli territory. It's not partitioned land that the actual festival was was committed on. It was part of new lands that they were trying to acquire, and so it was like 3 miles or maybe more than the actual partitioned lands, or actually the older settled colonial settlements. So it's even further on. It's basically super deep into Palestine, really deep, really close to the Gazan border. So these are lands that were never partitioned. They're lands the UN today recognizes are illegal to be occupied by Israelis. So how can you say it's an Israeli security concern when an attack happened not on Israeli land? It wasn't Israeli land, unless you believe this occupied land is Israeli. And this is just part of my argument. I'm interested to hear.
I mean, the thing is, when it comes to, I pulled up the map of the October 7th Hamas massacres. I mean, it did not happen within the borders of Gaza, but happened further out. But the thing was is that you do have
within the borders of Israel either, not the partition borders.
No, because I'm looking at the map. Unless this map is wrong, again, information warfare. I'm looking at it like they struck pretty much deep. I mean, Ofakim, I can't say this. Nedivat, Yahini, like it dug deep into Israeli territory. Because if you look at the map with Gaza, like it shows you like the map of Gaza, but then it shows you how farther off they were trying to hit. So you have Ofakim, Nedivat, Yahin, Sederat, and Zakim. I don't know if the name. I'm butchering the name, but like it happened very, very deep within Israeli territory.
This is what's so interesting because until now I'm understanding October 7th as just one insurgents attack where paratroopers landed and they saw people. I guess it's multiple insurgency factions happen all at the same time.
Well, you have Hamas, but you also have the PIJ, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad is one of them. I'm pretty sure there's other more that we aren't aware of, given the fact that like one of the biggest issues in regards to this, in regards to like, I mean, we also see this too here in America. It's like it's all decentralized, so different groups are rising up. But because there are different groups rising up, what ends up happening is that you're getting a lot of infighting. But also in regards to the on October 7th. Currently with the information that were available, unless we have his secret documents, it was a Hamas massacre. There might have been PIJ. Until we get further information, that's all I'm gonna leave it
Okay,
at.
so that is was it one location or was it multiple locations?
Multiple cities from the looks of this map.
Really, man, my reporting only heard one location.
So I
There's
mean,
also the rockets that were
so-
fired throughout the day as well. I think that's what he's talking about as well.
I know rockets
Yeah.
happen all the time. That's not part of that specific like October 7th attack. I know rockets they do it all the time, but the actual paratrooping, like the landing on the ground,
Yeah.
I'm just not sure how many different locations that. My understanding was one location, one big festival, and then the IDF showed up and started shooting down. But that's
okay,
able to
dude.
escape.
Yes, I see what I see what's going on.
But I
So
want to understand because this is important because
Yeah.
we said is this October 7th a national security risk? We need to understand exactly what parts of the lands that this happened in, and to see if this is a national security risk or this is a more of a resistance operations, an operation to kind of restore some of our lands back.
it happened very deep in Israeli territory because Ofakim, Nevital, Yahin, they're very far off from Gaza. I mean, there are some cities within the border of Gaza, you could argue that, but in regards, like, it wasn't just one, like, multiple sites got hit, which is one of the reasons why.
But do you understand what I'm trying to say? What I'm trying to
Here,
say
Yes,
I can
is-
clarify.
Well, no. What I'm trying to say is the UN partitioned lands are only 78%, but the lands that happened on the attack happened on them are more than the partitioned lands. So the attack were brand new settler colonialist lands that were just. That's my understanding from the reporting I saw, where these are new lands that the UN doesn't even recognize are part of Israel. They should not be legally Israel. So if we're talking about actual Israeli sovereignty, actual Israeli security, how can we say that this is a safety concern if this is not even part of Israel that's getting attacked? If it's just basically insurgents fighting, it's the Jewish militias fighting and the Gaza militias fighting, and they're fighting each other. And then so why would the IDF come in and get involved if it has nothing to do with it? If it's far away from it, and if because we're saying it's really close to Israel the attacks, but it's also really close to Gaza the attacks. So you recognize what I'm saying? If Hamas is the resistance force for Gaza, they have to do some kind of infighting as well. So if the settlers are coming in with their militias fighting and the Gaza are fighting them, why would the IDF come in and bomb everybody in? What's the IDF? The IDF has nothing to do in that area. The IDF has no authority in that area. It's not part of Israel. You know what I mean? They're trying to make it part of Israel. See, this is why what Hamas is doing is very important. If Hamas doesn't stand up and resist, these colonial settlements would already be completely occupied and taken over. Like there would be no Gaza. The only reason Gaza still exists is because of this resistance force.
But my thing is this is like I think I don't know if it came across as clear, but because after October 7th there was barely to little to no restraint at all. Now they're gonna have issues. Now they're gonna be overthrown because of that. And now like do you see what I mean? Like because there was a lack of restraint. There we go.
Are you talking about the Hamas?
Well, I'm talking about October 7th, like during the
but
attack.
Who's gonna get kicked out? Is it the Hamas that are gonna get kicked out or the IDF?
In regards to like the Gaza Strip, Hamas.
The October 7th, you said because of October 7th they got kicked out. So I'm trying to understand. They got kicked out.
Okay.
Are you talking about the settlers or the IDF?
Okay, so sorry, let me clarify. In regards to October 7th, one of the biggest issues in regards to how Hamas handled it was the lack of restraint. They went into the territories, just shot at anything that moved and kidnapped, but they also kidnapped foreign nationals, which made this way worse than it was.
Can
So
I
by
argue
kid-
against that? Can I argue against? I would argue that they did not break their charter. They only went after Israeli soldiers, and when they did find citizens, they only captured them and put them as hostages or prisoners. And also, that's from the reportings I've read.
Right,
And
right.
I've also read that IDF also was there and they were shooting and because we saw it burnt to the crisp bodies, and this is an actual and we also heard about the Hannibal what was it, the Hannibal doctrine that was used in October 7, and since October, like before October 7 even, the Hannibal doctrine where it says it's an extreme political disadvantage for us to lose Israelis as prisoners of war or hostages. It's extremely painful for us to recover them because we don't want to give any parts of any solutions to the Israeli to the terrorist force. So they just kill them. That's called the Hannibal doctrine. They kill the hostages so they don't have the Hamas wouldn't have a bargaining chip. It's called the Hannibal doctrine. I know that there's reports that the Hannibal doctrine was being committed over there, and that's my understanding. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see.
What I'm saying is Hamas. Where can you prove that Hamas was the one that killed all the citizens? My understanding is Hamas did not break their charter in any way. My understanding is Hamas went in only to fight IDF soldiers to reclaim back their lands. They found citizens, they put them in hostages, got rid of them, prisoners of war. But what happened was there was IDF soldiers as well, and we also know that Hannibal Doctrine was used. So we know that these people were killing each other. So basically, that's my argument. My argument is with all this reporting, we know this misinformation. How can we tell that Hamas actually broke out of their charter and killed innocent civilians? Because we know the Hannibal Doctrine was being used at the same time. We know that IDF soldiers existed there because there's burnt to the crisp bodies of Hamas soldiers.
I mean, so I looked at the Hannibal Doctrine. Basically, no hostages. We're not going to argue with it. The issue with October 7th is the fact that Hamas went in. It doesn't matter if it was one or several. The fact that they went into Israeli territory and kidnapped foreign nationals and shot at civilians. I hear about the whole Hannibal Doctrine. I'm trying to pull up how many people died from October 7th from the crossfire. I haven't found anything yet. Let me see. Yeah, I haven't found anything, but my thing is in regards to like the entire thing with October 7th was the fact that Hamas was trying to go over there, did fire on civilians, they did kidnap foreign nationals, and then they brought them back. I think even Hamas admitted themselves that there was that their mistakes were made. I didn't see if they clarified on that. Admitted mistakes were made.
Also, I just want to make some clarification from earlier because there was some confliction with you guys talking about how Israel owned that land, and then he said that Palestine could say they own their land. The problem is that after the UN's plan that they gave that land to Israel after I think it was the 1967 Six-Day War. After that war, they did claim more land because of the war. They used that as justification, and because of that, my cat is just yapping. Jesus, sorry. But they took more land than they already owned from the UN's plan. So the problem is with that is that the UN says you can't take land from an act of war. I think that's like the general consensus. So there's a big confliction of if the land that they own from the Six-Day War is legally owned land. That is a big problem with that. But the problem is they're very, I do want to say, just to give the other side as well.
This is my first debate and we fucking rocked it, boys. We're going to grow.
I'm gonna go to the bathroom, so don't go crazy while it's unmoderated.
No, we won't. I'm still trying to. Find it.
You can talk. No.
No, I gotta say this. I mean, as a tangent before he comes back, I'm curious to hear like. I saw a TikTok and I think I responded to this. This girl got upset. She said, so it was a pro-Palestine rally. And she comes in and says, why were so many Muslims upset when a queer person spoke? For me, as someone who, like, I have friends that are Muslim, that's not cool. That's not cool with them. And, like, why is it that, for me, I'm trying to figure out why is everyone so surprised, like, that's not cool with them.
So sorry.
I don't know.
I'm not understanding exactly what you want me to respond to.
Yeah. So, like my reaction is, like, Queers for Palestine, like, there are, like, within here, in the West, there's a lot of, like, Queers for Palestine and all this other stuff. For me, as someone, like, I know Muslim cultures, I got friends that are Muslim. Just out of curiosity, like, what's in regards to your take on it? Because, for me, I find it disrespectful when you mix the LGBT flag with the Palestinian flag. I'm like, that's just, nope.
So, no. So, this is what happens. So I see what you mean. I want to ask you, are you objective morality or are you objective morality?
It's not objective morality. I mean,
where are we going?
No.
The second you tell me if you're subjective or objective, you don't have to tell